Bang, bang, bang. A knock on the door. Xiao Ran assumed it was the drunk guy, wondering how he'd suddenly mustered the courage. But a glance through the peephole revealed it was actually Jiang Wan. Surprising? Not in the slightest. In fact, Xiao Ran was a little puzzled that his ex-wife had only decided to show up today. Xiao Ran, I know you're in there, Jiang Wan cooed, her voice as gentle as she could manage. Please open the door. I have something to tell you. What would you possibly want to say? It would be the usual. I was wrong before, please forgive me, or I'll be completely devoted to you from now on. And her real motive? His lottery winnings. If Jiang Wan knew that some had already snowballed to over $1 billion, her enthusiasm would likely increase tenfold. Getting her to cut ties with the Zheng family would be a piece of cake. I'll play along for a bit. The apocalypse hadn't arrived yet, and he couldn't physically harm her, so he might as well mess with her a little. If you have something to say it out there, Xiao Ran stated coolly. Jiang Wan, however, was thrilled. This was the first time she'd been able to speak to Xiao Ran face-to-face since that dinner. The fact that he was even acknowledging her was progress. Xiao Ran, I know I was wrong before, she said, her tone dripping with sincerity. I also know that nothing I say can make up for the pain I caused you. But I have to tell you, the person I've always loved is you. The reason I got pregnant with Zhang Ziheo's bastard child was actually because I was raped by him. I'm a victim too. Boo-hoo-hoo. Xiao Ran was floored. You can spew such lies without even blinking? You're truly shameless. Do you take me for an idiot? Xiao Ran smirked inwardly, but adopted a skeptical tone. Really? Zhang Ziheo is that despicable and vile. MHM. Jiang Wan nodded eagerly, inwardly thinking, Xiao Ran is still so naive. He believes me just like that. This man hasn't changed a bit. Then she heard Xiao Ran say, in that case, go to the police and report him for rape. Huh? Jiang Wan froze, completely stumped. Report Zhang Ziheo for rape? Did she dare confront Zhang Ziheo? If they came face to face and Zhang Ziheo spilled everything about their affair, would she have any chance of winning Xiao Ran back? Thinking on her feet, she quickly said, too much time has passed, and I didn't collect any evidence. I can't press charges against him. Why worry about not having evidence? As long as a woman withdraws consent, it's rape, Xiao Ran said. You've been watching too many of those short social media videos, haven't you? Jiang Wan fumed silently. But could she dare rebuke Xiao Ran now? A man with 400 million was the boss. Xiao Ran, let's just forget it. Let bygones be bygones, she said softly. Now that Xiao Jie is dead, there are no more obstacles between us. Can we get back together? Xiao Ran, I know you like children. I'll give you a son, one that belongs to just us. Xiao Ran's expression was peculiar. He almost burst out laughing. Never mind that he now had over $1 billion. Even with the original 400 million, if he merely mentioned wanting a wife, countless women would throw themselves at him. If he really wanted to remarry, wasn't Lu Mei a much better catch? However, to toy with this malicious ex-wife, Xiao Ran patiently played along. I already have a girlfriend, he said. Ooh, Jiang Wan's heart clenched. An image involuntarily surfaced in her mind. A stunning beauty who made her feel utterly inadequate. Is it that lawyer? MHM. Xiao Ran nodded. In truth, he and Lu Mei were, at most, in a somewhat ambiguous phase. He hadn't pursued her, and Lu Mei hadn't confessed any feelings. But the current script called for it, so he threw Lu Mei's name into the mix. Jiang Wan almost choked. That bitch. No wonder she found it strange back then why Lu Mei would come running whenever called. So, she'd had ulterior motives all along. She said anxiously, Xiao Ran, that lawyer is obviously a gold digger. Think about it. Why did you have no luck with women before, but suddenly such a beautiful woman is chasing after you? She's after your money, not you. But I'm different. When you had nothing, I still like you and chose to marry you. Xiao Ran, you should marry a virtuous wife. Even the most beautiful woman will get old one day. Only someone who truly loves you will stay with you for life. What the actual hell? Xiao Ran was dumbfounded. Even with all the audacity in the world, no normal person would dare utter such words. How thick could her skin be? You married me because you love me? Bullshit. It was to cover up your premarital pregnancy and to protect Zhang Ziheo's reputation and job. You found an honest guy like me to take the fall, and now you're twisting that to prove you love me? Unfreaking believable. Truly, the shameless are invincible. Xiao Ran pretended to ponder, looking as if he might be swayed. Jiang Wan sensed it and quickly pressed. Xiao Ran, if you don't believe me, you can call that lawyer right now. Tell her your investments failed and you're broke. See if she doesn't break up with you on the spot. Huh? If I didn't have money, would you still be here pestering me? There was no way Xiao Ran would fall for that. Instead, he said, "So what if she's after my money? She's gorgeous, and she's got big boobs. I like her a lot. So, don't come bothering me anymore." The hint was clear enough. Beautiful big boobs. With that, he couldn't be bothered to continue the charade with this vile woman. He went straight back to his room and put on a movie. Jiang Wan kept talking, but after a while, with no response from Xiao Ran, she realized he had left. If this were the past, Xiao Ran would have had to kneel on a keyboard for at least 3 days for such behavior. But now, how could she dare complain? She said softly, "Xiao Ran, time reveals a person's true heart. You'll eventually discover that I'm the only one who truly loves you." Afraid Xiao Ran hadn't heard, she sent him the same message via her phone before finally leaving. But how could she possibly compete with Lu Mei? The woman was a lawyer, a profession that immediately sounded high-class and impressive. Besides, that woman was a true vixen, not only stunningly beautiful, but also with such an amazing figure. Men were so superficial, only liking these pretty-faced, big-breasted, seductive tarts. But Xiao Ran had 400 million. How could she bear to give up? Most importantly, Xiao Ran was her ex-husband. That money should rightfully be hers. What should she do? She couldn't help but think about plastic surgery and breast augmentation. She was tempted, but also hesitant. Firstly, it would cost a fortune, and secondly, the recovery process was incredibly painful. Xiao Ran smirked coldly. Jiang Wan had gotten the hint and would probably start considering plastic surgery and breast implants. Haha, that'll cost her a pretty penny. Let her lose her money and suffer for it. However, he figured Jiang Wan was still hesitating, not yet fully committed. He'd just have to give her a little push. Should he just wait for the apocalypse to kill this vicious woman? No, he couldn't let her off that easily. Xiao Ran thought of Lu Susu. It was time to arrange a meeting with that fitness coach. After dinner, Xiao Ran went to the gym to work up a sweat. After a month, his form was already impeccable, but he had signed up for another month of Lu Susu's private coaching. So, as soon as he arrived, Lu Susu came over to guide his training, though there wasn't much left to teach. "Want to grab a late-night snack later?" Xiao Ran said with a smile. "Sure." Lu Susu's eyes instantly lit up. A month of effort was finally showing a glimmer of hope. After Xiao Ran worked out for 3 hours, the gym was about to close. Lu Susu went to change, and they left together. Seeing her incredibly hot figure, her full hips swaying with such allure, every man couldn't help but swallow hard. Xiao Ran took Lu Susu for a late-night snack right near their residential complex. It wasn't actually that late, just past 10 p.m., so naturally, some aunties and uncles out for a stroll bumped into them. Xiao Ran was a celebrity now, instantly recognizable. And looking at Lu Susu, everyone naturally understood. The late-night snack was barbecue. Xiao Ran specially ordered a few lamb kidneys, making Lu Susu's pretty face flush a charming crimson. After eating, Xiao Ran took Lu Susu back to the complex. This, too, was seen by many, but Xiao Ran didn't care at all. He wanted people to see. The two took the elevator to the 15th floor, opened the door, and went in. Lu Susu immediately threw herself into his arms. The night passed, filled with passion. Xiao Ran felt like his past 20-odd years had been a waste. He and Jiang Wan had, of course, a marital life, but Jiang Wan was completely just going through the motions with him. Not only did she insist on the lights being off, but she also didn't allow him to kiss her here or there, and what's more, she would lie there unresponsive the entire time. Thus, their encounters had dwindled year by year, averaging less than once a month. Previously, Xiao Ran thought Jiang Wan was just frigid in that department, but only after his rebirth did he realize Jiang Wan simply had no feelings for him. Her heart was set on someone else, and with him, it was merely a perfunctory duty. So, in Xiao Ran's eyes, that kind of thing was just so, something needed only when he'd held back for too long and needed release. However, after last night, Xiao Ran realized how incredibly pleasurable it could be. Lu Susu was completely different from Jiang Wan. She was fiery and passionate, not only cooperative but also proactive and experienced. Good heavens, Xiao Ran now knew that this sort of thing could be so exciting and varied. Of course, with Lu Susu being so experienced, she must have been with many men, but Xiao Ran wasn't planning to marry her, so did he need to care? And Lu Susu was only after money. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. I thought you were an unromantic brute, but you're surprisingly skilled. Lu Susu praised, her eyes brimming with satisfaction and allure. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. "I'll give you 100,000 a month and buy you a car." "Thank you, boss," Lu Susu said seductively. Being Xiao Ran's wife? Of course, she didn't have such grand ambitions, and she knew her place. If she could easily sleep with Xiao Ran, what about other men? So, Xiao Ran was just looking for some novelty. The price Xiao Ran offered made her very satisfied. 100,000 a month, plus a car, TSK. The two had played wildly last night, and ended up exhausted, falling asleep right after. So, they both felt quite uncomfortable and decided to shower together. Bang, bang, bang. Just then, there was a heavy, urgent knocking on the door, as if someone in the family had died. It had to be Jiang Wan. No one else would be so frantic. Xiao Ran threw on a bathrobe and walked out. Looking through the peephole, it was indeed Jiang Wan. She's here. The plan is progressing smoothly. He smiled and opened the door. Xiao Ran, I heard you had a woman stay over last night. Is it true? Jiang Wan asked urgently. Xiao Ran nodded. It's true. How could you do this? Jiang Wan's face turned ashen, an expression of fury, as if she'd been cuckolded. Xiao Ran chuckled. Why can't I? I'm single now. Can't a single man find a woman? That made sense. Jiang Wan stood there, mouth agape, not knowing what to say. Xiao Ran, who is it? Lu Susu also came out, wrapped in a bathrobe. Hearing a woman's voice, she wasn't afraid to appear like this. The two women's gazes immediately met. Not that lawyer. Jiang Wan was almost mad with anger. Xiao Ran. Oh, Xiao Ran, you're something else. Yesterday you said that lawyer was your girlfriend, and then you bedded another woman. But as she sized up Lu Susu, her heart couldn't help but tighten. Because the other woman was 1, prettier than her, 2, younger than her, and 3, had a better figure, tall and well-toned, and crucially, large breasts and a round butt. Oh, my ex-wife, Xiao Ran replied casually. Jiang Wan was unwilling to give up. Xiao Ran was now a piggy bank worth 400 million. How could she just let go? She quickly said, Aren't you afraid Lu Mei will find out if you do this? Before Xiao Ran could speak, Lu Susu interjected. Isn't it normal for rich men to have mistresses? What? You're divorced and still want to control your ex-husband? What a joke. Ew. Jiang Wan was furious and raised her hand to slap Lu Susu. But the other woman was a fitness coach. In a fight, she could take on at least 2 Jiang Wans. So Lu Susu steadily grabbed Jiang Wan's wrist and said disdainfully, Assault is illegal, sis. Sis? Jiang Wan nearly fumed. Wasn't that implying she was old? Lu Susu pushed again, released her grip, and Jiang Wan had to take a few steps back. What else could Jiang Wan say? She looked at Lu Susu's at least E-cup breasts, then thought of Lu Mei, who was also well endowed, and suddenly understood. Xiao Ran indeed liked women with large breasts. Yes, what man didn't? She had been a bit hesitant before, but now she made up her mind. Xiao Ran, I will absolutely not give up. You wait for me. She hurried away. Lu Susu was stunned and turned to Xiao Ran. Why did she leave? Was she supposed to stay for dinner? Xiao Ran smiled leisurely. She's probably going to get plastic surgery and breast implants. Lu Susu looked down at her own chest, then thought of Jiang Wan's size, a look of contempt on her face. With her foundation, the most she could get is AC. She herself was an A. Xiao Ran laughed heartily. Jiang Wan had received 1 million in compensation from Zhang Zihao's wife's family. Paid him 410,000, and with some savings, she definitely had 600,000. But throwing that into the bottomless pit of plastic surgery, 600,000 could easily be spent. He looked forward to seeing Jiang Wan impoverished, only then realizing she'd been deceived by him. By then, she'd have foreign objects in her body, making daily activities very inconvenient. Yet she'd be reluctant to remove them, making her regret it to death. Xiao Ran and Lu Susu went out for breakfast. After eating, Xiao Ran took her to buy a car. Since he had bought a G-Wagon last time, Xiao Ran couldn't be bothered to go to other dealerships and took Lu Susu straight there. A major customer like him was naturally welcomed. As soon as they entered, they were treated like royalty. In the end, Xiao Ran bought a car for just over 500,000 yuan and put it directly in Lu Susu's name. This made Lu Susu ecstatic, showering Xiao Ran with kisses. Similarly, the saleswoman was green with envy. A car worth over 500,000, given away just like that? Daddy, sponsor me too. Unfortunately, firstly, her looks didn't compare to Lu Susu's, and secondly, her figure was far too lacking. Even if she batted her eyelashes until they nearly fell out, Xiao Ran acted as if he hadn't seen a thing. After buying the car, Xiao Ran and Lu Susu parted ways. He had important business to attend to. Arriving at the warehouse, Xiao Ran once again began to gather supplies. A miscellaneous assortment, everything imaginable. For example, firewood for the fireplace. At the beginning of the cataclysm, Although the outside temperature dropped to around minus 10 degrees Celsius, with air conditioning and underfloor heating, the indoor temperature could easily be raised above 20 degrees. The problem was the power went out on the fourth day. Without electricity, could you still use air conditioning or underfloor heating? So, when Xiao Ran renovated the villa, he requested a fireplace to be installed, which could burn firewood. And firewood, unlike gasoline or diesel, wasn't rationed. You could buy it if you had money, and no one would come to check on you no matter how much you bought. Freshwater, a resource as precious as food. After the cataclysm began, besides bottled purified water, were there any uncontaminated water sources? None. Distillation could produce pure water, but firstly, the efficiency was too low, and secondly, boiling water also required energy. With future power and gas outages, how would one boil water? Using the wooden furniture in the house. Therefore, drinking water was one of the key supplies Xiao Ran stockpiled in large quantities. Besides collecting tap water, Xiao Ran also ordered water from purified water companies, having them deliver it directly by truck. It wasn't expensive anyway, so he might as well stock up. Around 5 p.m., he finished his day's work and returned to the complex. After dinner, he went to the gym. Lu Susu still guided his exercises, and after finishing, they went home together to continue exercising. Another night passed. In the morning, Lu Susu went to the gym for work first. Xiao Ran, on the other hand, slept in a bit longer. Bang, 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 the door was suddenly knocked. Xiao Ran was awakened. His first reaction was, Jiang Wan again? That shouldn't be. She had received such a big shock yesterday. She should be choosing a plastic surgery hospital right now. Xiao Ran threw on a dressing gown, walked to the door, and looked through the peephole. Outside stood someone he would never have expected. Han Yun, the beautiful, young married woman from the 17th floor. Xiao Ran opened the door. Xiao. Han Yun had just started to speak, but seeing Xiao Ran in just a dressing gown, her pretty face flushed red. She quickly squeezed into the room and even closed the door behind her, as if afraid of being seen. It made sense. A married woman like her visiting a single man, just the neighborhood gossip alone could make it impossible for her to hold her head high in the complex. Xiao Ran took a step back and smiled. Need something? Can you lend me some money? The beautiful woman asked, feeling embarrassed herself after saying it, and couldn't help but lower her head. How much do you need to borrow? Xiao Ran asked. Han Yun couldn't help but fiddle with her fingers. After a while, she said, 300,000. Her interactions with Xiao Ran were limited to a few encounters while waiting for the elevator or inside it. They weren't even friends. Yet, she was asking to borrow 300,000 right off the bat. Wasn't this treating Xiao Ran like a sucker? Xiao Ran neither refused nor agreed, asking, what happened? He vaguely had a guess. Han Yun hesitated for a moment, but still spoke. If you ask someone for money without saying why, can you really expect them to lend it to you? My husband gambled. Not only did he lose everything, but he also borrowed money from the casino. Now, they're at our door demanding payment. They said if we can't pay back within 3 days, they want me to become a prostitute to pay it back. Han Yun started crying as she spoke. As expected, Xiao Ran nodded. The drunk man he encountered in the elevator earlier was indeed Han Yun's husband. How did you end up marrying a gambler? He asked. Han Yun sighed. My husband wasn't like this before. He was successful in his career and handsome. It was only later. He was scammed, his investment failed, and he lost the company he worked so hard to build. He became despondent after that and later developed a gambling addiction. It's just that before, he'd lose at most tens of thousands, never like now, losing 300,000 all at once. Shouldn't you ask your parents-in-law for money? Xiao Ran said again. Han Yun shook her head. My in-laws are already disappointed in my husband. They won't give us any more money. Well, even his own parents had given up on their son, but she was still loyal and never left him. TSK, true love. However, gambling and drugs, indeed, one shouldn't touch either. They lead to family ruin. Xiao Ran, can you help me this once, please? She grabbed Xiao Ran's hand, her face full of pleading. Xiao Ran shook his head. We're not related, nor are we friends. Why should I lend you money? Did she think that just because he won the lottery, he didn't care about money and would casually lend out 300,000? Did she take him for a soft-hearted fool? Han Yun couldn't help but feel disappointed and released Xiao Ran's hand. Xiao Ran added, however, if you're willing to use something as collateral, I'll lend you the money. Han Yun's eyes instantly lit up again, asking, what do you want me to use as collateral? You, Xiao Ran smiled. Han Yun was stunned at first. Then she understood, her pretty face flushing red, followed by great anger. You're shameless, she cried out. She turned, opened the door, and walked out. Just then, a young couple from 1503 was waiting for the elevator. It was peak time for work and school. So many people were using the elevators. The elevator on their side had just gone down, so they came over here. Seeing this, Han Yun, perhaps fearing misunderstanding or wanting to emphasize her own purity, said, Xiao Ran, don't think you're so great just because you have some stinking money. I will absolutely never agree to your shameless request. After speaking, she quickly ran down the emergency staircase. The young couple naturally looked at Xiao Ran with strange gazes. Did the situation even need explaining? Xiao Ran was relying on his money, probably trying to keep Han Yun as a mistress, but she rejected him. Beast. Ding! The elevator arrived. The young couple walked in, and, as the elevator doors closed, they even shot Xiao Ran a disdainful look. Xiao Ran was furious. You're the one who came to borrow money, and I can't even set conditions? You expect to borrow 300,000 with just empty words? Do you really think others are fools? Moreover, you said such things in front of others, clearly trying to deliberately slander me. Fine. Xiao Ran sneered, and also went up the emergency stairs. Apartment 1702. He knocked on the door. Who is it? A man's voice, tinged with strong impatience, came from inside. Property management, Xiao Ran said. Click, the door opened. It was the drunk man from 2 days ago. He naturally saw Xiao Ran and was stunned. How did you become property management? At this moment, Han Yun was also peeking from inside the room. When she saw Xiao Ran, she couldn't help but feel guilty. Xiao Ran even waved at Han Yun and said, I haven't given you the money yet. Why did you run off so quickly? How do you want to receive it? I don't have cash. Give me an account number, and I'll transfer it to you. The drunk man's name was Lin Yue. He was first stunned, then erupted in anger, roaring at Xiao Ran. What money? What did you two do? Xiao Ran quickly waved his hands and smiled. Don't misunderstand. We didn't do anything. This was the truth. However, how could Lin Yue believe him? If there's no money involved, why would you give my wife money? And you're only wearing a bathrobe. He turned his head to Han Yun and roared. Why is he giving you money? You, tell me, what were you doing out behind my back just now? Han Yun knew Xiao Ran was doing this deliberately to retaliate for her slandering him earlier, but now she could only patiently explain to her husband. I went to borrow money from him just now, but he made an improper request, and I refused him. He must be unhappy about being rejected, so he's deliberately trying to sow discord between us. Xiao Ran smiled and said, if I were sowing discord, would I offer real money? The account number. I'll transfer it to you. Lin Yue wavered and said to his wife, give him your payment QR code. Who husband? Han Yun's voice trembled. Lin Yue didn't believe her. Lin Yue remained unmoved, merely saying, if you have a clear conscience, why are you afraid to give him your payment code? Helpless, Han Yun had to take out her phone and show Xiao Ran a payment QR code. Xiao Ran scanned it. Beep. He entered a string of numbers, then confirmed. Lin Yue snatched his wife's phone, glanced at it, and his face immediately turned ashen. He roared, 5,000. He transferred 5,000 yuan to you. Tell me, what exactly did you two do just now? Did you sleep together? Did you? Han Yun quickly explained, husband, listen to me. Nothing happened between him and me. He's just trying to make you misunderstand me. Xiao Ran, however, winked at her. I'm quite satisfied with you. Come find me again next time. Saying this, he went down the emergency staircase. After the emergency door closed, he could still hear Lin Yue and Han Yun arguing. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. You harm me once, I harm you once, perfectly even. However, the current Han Yun is still quite arrogant. I wonder if, when the cataclysm strikes, when there's no food, no water, starving and thirsty, Han Yun can still maintain such pride, instead of abandoning her dignity in front of a hearty meal, letting herself be toyed with. At that time, if you'd rather starve to death than lose your integrity, I'll respect you for it. Let's wait and see. Xiao Ran went home, washed up, changed his clothes, went out for lunch, then went to the warehouse to continue receiving goods and shopping. Time passed day by day, and the apocalypse drew nearer. Xiao Ran's money in the stock market had reached a staggering 3 billion. Although the 2-month period wasn't up yet, he had already begun to gradually liquidate his positions and started a frantic buying spree. Pork, 5,000 tons at a time, costing over 100 million in one go. Beef, another 5,000 tons, another 200 million gone. Lamb, the same 5,000 tons, even more expensive, costing over 300 million. However, Xiao Ran didn't buy large quantities of raw fish and shrimp because the interdimensional space couldn't store living things, and dead fish and shrimp didn't taste good. Besides, he had already collected nearly 10,000 banquet tables worth of food. He wasn't short of fish, shrimp, or crab. Fruits, all sorts of fruits, 1,000 tons of each. Vegetables, likewise, 1,000 tons of each. Rice, preferably Wuchang rice, as much as he could get. And various grains, also 1,000 tons each. Under Xiao Ran's frenzied buying, the money in his bank account couldn't accumulate. As soon as it passed 100 million, it would be spent immediately. By May 17th, even including the floating profits from the stock market, Xiao Ran only had 200 million left. Spending money is so damn tiring. The villa renovation wasn't completed on schedule, but was delayed until today. Jiang Wan formally handed over the house for him to inspect. Xiao Ran moved into the new house, tested all the designs and modifications he had requested, and satisfied, paid the final installment. 10 million. 2 days later, the G-Wagon modification was also completed, and he was notified to pick up the car. Xiao Ran arrived at the entrance of the residential complex, only to hear someone call him. Jiang Wan. He turned his head and almost didn't recognize her. She looked completely different. She had plastic surgery and indeed looked much better than before, but her face was too stiff, exuding an artificial, techie feel even from a distance. She had disappeared for over a month. She had indeed gone for plastic surgery. Xiao Ran, look at me. Jiang Wan stood proudly in front of Xiao Ran, showcasing her technologically enhanced face. Xiao Ran glanced at her, then turned his head away. Xiao Ran, is that your only reaction? Jiang Wan was stunned. Xiao Ran chuckled. You asked me to look at you, and I did. Shouldn't you say something? Jiang Wan became anxious. Say what? Xiao Ran retorted. Praise your beauty? Please, with your current zombie face, don't go out at night. You'll scare the children. Xiao Ran. Jiang Wan shrieked, looking utterly exasperated. Jiang Wan trembled with anger. For the plastic surgery and breast augmentation, she had not only thrown in all her money, but had even taken out a loan, owing the bank nearly 100,000. What was all this for? To reconcile with Xiao Ran and share his 400 million fortune. And the result? Xiao Ran actually said something like that. You've been playing me all along. She finally understood. Xiao Ran nodded, smiling. Yes, you only just realized? Jiang Wan almost fainted from anger. She had invested 700,000 in plastic surgery and suffered so much, all for what? Not only did she fail to rekindle her old relationship with Xiao Ran, but she was also cruelly toyed with. That was 700,000. Now her job was gone, her savings were gone, and she was deep in debt. What would she do in the future? Xiao Ran, I'll fight you. She was about to rush forward and fight Xiao Ran, but her breasts were too heavily augmented. When she ran, they wobbled precariously, making her unable to run fast and unstable. Xiao Ran simply sidestepped, and Jiang Wan lunged into empty air, lost her balance, and fell flat on her face. I wonder if she ruptured her implants. Seeing that the ride-hailing car he called had arrived, Xiao Ran paid no more attention to Jiang Wan, got into the car, and drove off. The apocalypse was coming soon. At that time, he would continue to humiliate and strike Jiang Wan. He had to at least wait until the 15th day to send Zheng Youjuan's family to the underworld. Jiang Wan sat collapsed on the ground, wailing loudly. Now all her money was spent. She even owed tens of thousands. Her job was gone. What would she do? She wiped her tears and immediately had an idea. Go home. However, she couldn't tell the truth. She had to pretend she still had a lot of money and let her family support her. Anyway, they coveted the compensation money she had, so they would only try to curry favor with her. As for the future, she'd think about it later. Xiao Ran picked up the car and drove directly to the warehouse to continue collecting supplies. Until the money ran out, he would be here collecting supplies. Counting the time, there were only 11 days left. Spending 200 million? Easy peasy. Today he completed liquidating his stocks, and the money in his bank card became 230 million. That was it, his total assets. He continued his massive procurement. Xiao Ran counted on his fingers, clothes, batteries, assault boats. Useful and useless things alike. He even bought a large pile of women's underwear, various models of mountaineering clothes, and thermal boots. Was there anything else he missed? He carefully went over everything again, confirming that nothing was overlooked. So what now? No problem, just buy some things again. Xiao Ran went on another buying spree, and finally, only 100,000 remained in his bank account. This 100,000 would be kept for emergencies, or at worst, he could spend the last few days with escorts at a club. In the evening, Xiao Ran thought about it, and obediently drove back to the villa. Why not go for escorts? What if he got caught by the police? The fine was a small matter, But what if he was detained for 15 days? The apocalypse was already here. Forget it, forget it. No need to cause extra trouble at this time. Xiao Ran thought for a moment and decisively dismissed the idea of a final wild fling before the apocalypse. And why did he even think about escorts? Because Lu Susu had returned to her hometown. She had left a week ago. It wasn't that Xiao Ran got tired of her and kicked her out, but Lu Susu's mother back home was seriously ill, and since she was an only child, she resigned to go back and take care of her mother. Xiao Ran naturally wouldn't stop her. Out of consideration for their month-long relationship, he even asked Lu Susu for her address and sent her many things. When Lu Susu received them, she would only thank her generous benefactor, without any suspicion. It was one thing when he hadn't discovered the pleasure of that, but now that he had experienced it, being alone felt somewhat empty and made him think about it. Just endure a little longer. After the cataclysm began, firstly, there would be no police arresting people for soliciting, and secondly, it wouldn't just be clubs that had young ladies. Plenty of beautiful young wives and unmarried girls would become very open. Survival. This is human instinct, the fundamental need that overrides everything. Of course, Xiao Ran didn't deny that some people were virtuous and valued their purity and reputation more than their lives. He would never force anyone, only make exchanges. Having been hurt once, and very, very badly, he didn't need any emotions. As long as he himself was satisfied, that was enough. Why care about others? In this life, I will be a selfish person. Days passed, and Xiao Ran had collected all the deliveries. Unsettled, he meticulously inventoried everything again. Indeed, there absolutely was nothing missed. Actually, there was women. After being a bachelor for so many days, he was really finding it hard to bear. Xiao Ran felt it wasn't just because he had acquired a taste for it, but also because his body had become stronger. Rebirth had definitely changed his physique. He was strong, very strong. As Lu Susu said, his body surpassed at least 99% of people. It's well known that a strong body inevitably means vigorous male hormone secretion, so it was understandable that he would be thinking about that. Xiao Ran couldn't help but think of Lu Mei. Marrying her was impossible, but how could he be willing to let such a beautiful, enchanting creature fall into someone else's hands? Ding! Just then, he received a message. What a coincidence, speak of the devil. The message was from Lu Mei. Xiao Ran picked it up, and upon reading it, couldn't help but frown slightly. Lu Mei said she was invited by one of her best friends to visit her new home and would be staying for some time. When are you coming back? Xiao Ran messaged. At least half a month. Lu Mei couldn't help but complain to him. Yaya is a hardcore doomsday prepper. She started building some kind of doomsday fortress 2 years ago, and it's finally completed these past 2 days. She invited me over as a guest, and I couldn't refuse. Oh my God. Why are there doomsday preppers who would actually use connections to buy land in mountains and spend nearly 100 million to build an iron cage? Xiao Ran was speechless. He did know some doomsday preppers who converted their basements into shelters, and there were even doomsday canned goods sold online. But he never imagined that not only did such people exist in the country, but they were also willing to spend 100 million to build a doomsday fortress. One could only say, they hit the mark by a fluke. But aren't you trying to steal my girl? But could Xiao Ran stop her? His relationship with Lu Mei was still in an ambiguous stage, not yet lovers. So what standing did he have to stop her? To take a step back, even if they were truly lovers, couldn't Lu Mei go support her friend? I won't talk anymore, I need to pack. The car I called is already here. After Lu Mei sent another message, there was no further activity. Clearly, she had gone to busy herself with her own affairs. Xiao Ran smiled and put his phone aside. May 31, SD. At night, Xiao Ran tossed and turned, unable to sleep. Beside him lay a mutt. It was a stray dog he had found near the warehouse. Initially, the stray dog would steal his food, but later Xiao Ran started feeding it, gradually dispelling its wariness. Finally, 3 days before the cataclysm, it became completely reliant on Xiao Ran and followed him home. Xiao Ran felt that after the cataclysm, humans would be less reliable than animals, so he preferred to adopt a dog. Xiao Ran felt that after the cataclysm, humans would be less reliable than animals, so he preferred to adopt a dog. Tomorrow, the apocalypse would descend. He felt a kind of excitement, like a woman pregnant for 10 months, awaiting childbirth. Perhaps, after his rebirth, the apocalypse wouldn't come? He was apprehensive, and after an unknown amount of time, he finally fell asleep. A night passed, and a new day arrived. Xiao Ran ate breakfast, but it was somewhat tasteless. The closer it got to 9 a.m., the more nervous he became. Uithergloch them, Haneraur wedi uithergloch them, Uithaur pim degminid them. The time reached 9 a.m. Xiao Ran sat by the window, looking up at the sky. However, no hailstones fell. Xiao Ran was stunned. Could it be that after his rebirth, the cataclysm truly wouldn't come? That would be quite amusing. But it didn't matter. The supplies he had prepared were enough to last him hundreds of lifetimes, and he also possessed spatial abilities, allowing him to achieve great things. Thwack! Just then, a loud thud was heard, the sound of a heavy object hitting glass. Xiao Ran jolted and looked out the window. On the ground lay an ice ball the size of a fist. It wasn't a toy made by some naughty kid with their home freezer, because this ice ball was distinctly dark green. Hail! Xiao Ran's heart suddenly tightened. Then he felt a wave of relief. The apocalypse arrived as scheduled. Thwack! Another hailstone fell, this time hitting the roof, making a sound like metal clashing. The originally clear sky rapidly darkened, and fog even began to rise. Xiao Ran smiled. The entire villa had been modified. Never mind fist-sized hailstones. Even head-sized ones wouldn't be a problem. Glass? That wasn't ordinary glass, but special grade. Even with a sledgehammer, you'd need hundreds of blows to crack it, let alone break it. Besides, he could also raise the steel plates, making it truly a steel-walled fortress. The hail wasn't falling fast, but getting hit by one of these was no joke. If it directly hit your head, it could split your head open. The entire residential complex was also in an uproar. People walking outside got hit and immediately cried out in pain. Cars and electric scooters, struck by such heavy hail, also blared their alarms. How could the complex not be noisy? And even though Xiao Ran had closed the door, the room temperature display was visibly dropping rapidly. It had actually been very hot this year, breaking 30 degrees Celsius by the end of May, so people sensitive to heat had to sleep with air conditioning at night. But now, the temperature plummeted directly from 32 degrees, quickly dropping below 20 degrees. Just an hour later, the room temperature had fallen to 15 degrees. Everyone had been wearing short sleeves, but now they had to find sweaters and put them back on. And by noon, the room temperature had surprisingly dropped to 5 degrees. Xiao Ran had already lit the fireplace, throwing in a pile of firewood, and the indoor temperature quickly rose to over 20 degrees, warm as spring, even a bit hot. So he also let in some cool air. One reason was it was too hot, and the other was it was dry and needed some moist air to reduce the dryness. Comfortable. Ding, ding, ding. His phone received several messages consecutively. Xiao Ran looked. They were from Lu Mei and Lu Susu, both expressing shock at the sudden hail. Fortunately, they were indoors when the hail started. Xiao Ran chatted with them for a few sentences, and then everyone went about their own business. Xiao Ran turned on the TV. In his previous life, he hadn't been this leisurely. After the cataclysm began, he was constantly taking care of his fake son, either cooking or doing laundry, busy as a bee. Many TV stations had switched to emergency news broadcasts, reporting on the sudden hail. The hail is toxic. This had already been discovered. Experts on the news were loudly urging people not to touch the hail out of curiosity and certainly not to lick it. Otherwise, mild cases would result in diarrhea, and severe cases could lead to immediate death. It was absolutely no laughing matter. Xiao Ran switched to CCTV. At this time, CCTV was naturally the most authoritative. CCTV was also doing a live news broadcast, connecting with 3 experts in climatology, chemistry, and astronomy. The astronomy experts speculated that this wave of strangely toxic hail might be related to the mysterious cosmic rays from deep space a few days ago, which had an unknown impact on Earth. The climate expert predicted that Earth had entered an ice age prematurely. Although the temperature wouldn't drop to absurd levels immediately, preparations should be made for it to be at least 10 degrees lower than a normal winter. The chemistry expert was analyzing the liquid from the melted hail, but couldn't identify the toxins in the water, only issuing a warning. Absolutely do not drink water contaminated by the toxic hail. Then, the 3 experts unanimously advised, absolutely do not go out. The hail itself was very dangerous, not to mention highly toxic. Therefore, do not go out, at least until the hail stopped. Xiao Ran couldn't help but shake his head. The wish was beautiful, but reality was cruel. For at least 15 days after the cataclysm began, the hail never stopped, though it did become much smaller, with lower density and smaller hailstones. But without prior preparation, not many families had large stores of food and clean water. He took out a few dishes from his interdimensional space and placed them on the table. Meat, shrimp, vegetables, and a soup. He ate with rice, and gave the mutt some food and rice. Basically, whatever he ate, the dog ate. After eating and resting for a bit, he started his workout. This habit had to be maintained. After finishing his workout, he took a shower. He was now using the water storage tank, which held a full 5 cubic meters. So, as long as Xiao Ran ensured the tank didn't run dry, the taps in the house wouldn't stop. Showering was of course no problem, and the toilet could be flushed normally. In the evening, he finished off the leftover lunch. Even though he had enough supplies to last him hundreds of lifetimes, Xiao Ran had no habit of wasting. Wasting is shameful. After dinner, he put on thick clothes, took the dog, he named it Bowsy, leopard, and went to the basement. There was an iron door here. Xiao Ran first checked the surveillance, then opened it and went out to walk the dog. The basement connected to the complex's garage. After a long, narrow passage, they arrived. It was quite lively here. The uncles and aunties, with nowhere else to stroll, were doing their square dancing here. Dog owners were also walking their beloved pets around the garage, and some young people were kicking a ball. But the garage was only so big. It usually looked empty, but now, with so many people suddenly crowding in, it naturally became congested. Soon, arguments broke out. The cause was a dog actually urinating on the foot of an auntie doing square dancing, which naturally led to an argument with the dog owner. Both sides stuck to their guns, one accusing the other of occupying public space for square dancing, the other cursing about walking a dog off-leash and letting it urinate on people. The argument was heated and irreconcilable. Xiao Ran saw a group of 4 people walking towards him. Weren't they his ex-wife's family? Jiang Wan walked in front, while Zheng Yujun and his wife, plus their son, flanked her like bodyguards, their faces openly showing ingratiation. Xiao Ran understood with just a thought. These 3 wanted the compensation money Jiang Wan had. Having lived together for 4 years, how could Xiao Ran not understand this family's greed and materialism? However, you don't know that Jiang Wan is already bankrupt. Then I'll help you understand the truth. After all, I just can't stand deception. At this moment, Jiang Wan's group of 4 drew closer. Xiao Ran, Jiang Wan seethed, her voice laced with pure hatred. Sensing her intense hostility, Leopard immediately bared its teeth and let out a low growl at Jiang Wan. If Xiao Ran hadn't been holding the leash, it probably would have lunged. Excellent. This wasn't some pampered pet Xiao Ran wanted. A faint smile played on his lips. I made you lose money before, and now I'm rubbing salt in your wounds. But in a couple of days, you'll have to swallow your pride and come begging me. He feigned surprise. Where did you get your plastic surgery and breast implants done? I hear those procedures aren't cheap these days. The surgery alone must be hundreds of thousands, and with aftercare, it's probably at least 700,000 or 800,000, right? Xiao Ran had no idea about the actual costs, but he deliberately exaggerated the figures. Zheng Yujun immediately grew anxious. He knew exactly how much money his daughter had. If she'd really spent 700,000 or 800,000 on her face and chest, forget about helping her brother. She'd be in debt. Is what this brat's saying true? The old man demanded, his tone aggressive. What a freaking useless teammate. Jiang Wan cursed inwardly. Shouldn't the family be united against outsiders right now? You're questioning me just because of something Xiao Ran said? Isn't this just internal strife? But who could blame them? The Zheng family was notoriously snobbish and greedy. They'd kicked out their own daughter and grandson for money before. Questioning her now was hardly surprising. Jiang Wan had no choice but to explain, Dad, don't listen to his nonsense. He just wants to stir up trouble for our family. My cosmetic procedures didn't cost that much. Don't worry. Hearing this, Zheng Yujun was still skeptical, but at least he didn't press further. But would the old man let it go so easily? He would definitely check Jiang Wan's accounts when he got back, and there would be hell to pay then. Jiang Wan knew this too, and her resentment toward Xiao Ran deepened. In a cursing tone, she said, I hope this hailstorm lasts a long time. That way, your 400 million will just sit in the bank, useless. You can look at it, but you won't be able to buy a thing. Oh, has your mouth been blessed or something? Quite effective, aren't you? Indeed, this natural disaster was far more terrifying than anyone imagined. It wasn't something you could just endure for a bit. Soon, the power would go out. The severe cold alone would be enough to make people suffer immensely, and with food and clean water shortages, in just over 10 days, countless people would die of thirst, starvation, or cold. Money? Cash would be worthless paper, too rough even to wipe your ass with. And funds in banks or the stock market, just a string of numbers, forever inaccessible. Even if you could withdraw it, wouldn't it also be worthless paper? Xiao Ran just smiled. How could Jiang Wan possibly know he was reborn, that his money had snowballed to 3 billion, and that he had converted it all into useful supplies? Now, he was undoubtedly the richest man in the world, surpassing the second richest by tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of millions of times. You're so selfish. Just to make my money useless, you're actually wishing for this disaster to continue. Xiao Ran deliberately raised his voice. Are you trying to bring misfortune upon all our neighbors and folks around here? In fact, when Xiao Ran had confronted Jiang Wan's family, some busybody elderly folks had gathered to watch the commotion. They heard Xiao Ran's words clearly, nodded in agreement, and then, very angrily, started pointing fingers at Jiang Wan. Some even began to curse her openly. This woman is so shameless. Getting pregnant out of wedlock, tricking an unsuspecting man. Her character is clearly flawed. And now she's wishing for this hailstorm to continue? What a venomous heart. Don't you know many people went to work as usual and are now trapped at their workplaces? You wish for the hail to continue? Aren't you trying to break up families? You venomous woman. Jiang Wan knew she'd misspoken. Her face paled, and she quickly turned and fled. She pushed through the crowd and ran towards her apartment building. Seeing this, the crowd turned their anger on Zheng Yujun and his wife. How did you raise such a daughter? Although Zheng Yujun and his wife were shameless and arrogant, faced with public condemnation, they didn't dare to argue back and also scurried away in disgrace. Most importantly, they needed to check their daughter's accounts. How much money did she really have left? Xiao Ran continued walking his dog until Leopard was too tired to go on. Then he took the dog home. This was only the first day. People hadn't yet grasped the true horror of this disaster. But with the continuous hail and no sign of rescue efforts, panic would soon set in. Xiao Ran returned home. He slept on the second floor. Looking out the window, he saw a thick layer of ice already covering the ground, with more hailstones falling. The fog was also growing denser. How could anyone drive in these conditions? It wasn't that the country hadn't dispatched the military to transport supplies, but multiple supply trucks had crashed, some even exploding, resulting in many casualties among the soldiers. Naturally, they had to temporarily halt these efforts. Weren't the soldiers' lives precious too? If it were merely a difficult task, the soldiers would undoubtedly risk their lives to solve it. But faced with an utterly insurmountable problem, how could they let the soldiers sacrifice themselves in vain? The dense fog reduced visibility to just over a meter. If that were the only issue, supplies could still be transported by manpower alone. But add the deadly hail to the mix, and rescue became impossible. Enough thinking about this. Time to work out for a bit. He exercised, and Leopard, copying him, stretched its doggy legs beside him. After his workout, he checked his phone and saw messages from Lu Mei and Lu Susu. They first complained about the weather, then urged him to be careful, as natural disasters were often accompanied by man-made ones. The key question was, could the police even respond in this weather? If this situation persisted for a few more days, it was unimaginable. Xiao Ran also told them to be careful, especially to keep their doors and windows securely locked, lest any criminals break in. Lu Susu readily agreed. Lu Mei, however, said her sister's apocalypse bunker was holding up great. The hail couldn't even break the glass. The bunker had a generator, plenty of diesel, and enough food and drink for several months, so they were completely fine. Xiao Ran put down his phone, took another shower, and went to bed. Clang, clang, clang. The sound of hailstones crashing down persisted all night, making sleep difficult. However, Xiao Ran had prepared earplugs, and with the disaster truly upon them, his anxieties about gains and losses had vanished, and he surprisingly fell asleep quickly. The night passed. Xiao Ran looked at the hazy white outside his window, then checked the time. It was already 7:30 a.m., but the sky, which should have been bright by now, was anything but. He got up. He didn't cook breakfast, but instead picked something out from his interdimensional space. The variety of breakfast options available was overwhelming, ranging from luxurious to simple. Today, Xiao Ran went for something ordinary, a serving of shepherd's purse wontons, still steaming hot. For Leopard, he tossed a cooked steak and provided a bowl of fresh milk. While eating, Xiao Ran turned on the TV to watch the news. A day had passed, but the hailstorm hadn't weakened in the slightest, and the dense fog showed no signs of dispersing. Meanwhile, terrifying news kept pouring in. After the disaster struck, all airplanes that had been in the sky had crashed. Planes flew at altitudes of 10,000 meters, where there was no hail or fog. But how could they land? Some planes risked descending, only to crash immediately. Others flew until their fuel ran out, forcing them to either attempt a risky landing or simply lose power and plummet. If these falling planes landed in uninhabited wilderness or the ocean, it was one thing, but if they crashed into cities, it would trigger another catastrophe. People couldn't go outside, but they could share videos they'd filmed and describe events in text messages, quickly spreading the news across the globe. This sent shivers down the spines of people worldwide. Could it be the apocalypse was coming? Xiao Ran picked up his phone and saw that the property manager had sent him an invitation to join a group, the residential complex's disaster response group. All homeowners in the complex, and even tenants, had received the invitation. Xiao Ran thought for a moment and chose to join the group chat. His phone screen instantly exploded with messages. So many people were posting that if you wanted to read anything, you had to scroll up to stop new messages from constantly appearing. Most people were asking if anyone had inside information about how long the disaster would last, or when government relief supplies would arrive. Then, someone stood out. A man named Li Zhonglin claimed his cousin worked for the city government. He said the disaster would last a long time, and the country had activated an emergency shelter plan. A select group would be chosen to hide in pre-built underground cities, emerging to rebuild society after the cataclysm passed. He had 3 spots for the underground city, and, being single, was willing to sell 2 of them. Interested parties should message him privately. Xiao Ran recalled this and couldn't help but shake his head. This had happened in his previous life, too. There were no underground cities. This Li Zhonglin was a complete scammer. He wasn't a homeowner in the complex, but a tenant, deliberately spreading false information. He had managed to deceive over a dozen people. Some lost money, which was minor, others were tricked out of their supplies, and some lost both their possessions and their lives. He kept scamming until the 11th day, when his scheme was exposed and he was beaten to death. By the 11th day of the disaster, the power had long been out. Everyone became an isolated island, and feelings of despair were infinitely magnified. In such circumstances, people were capable of anything. Xiao Ran didn't warn anyone. In fact, some people in the group were already cautioning others about scammers. But in times like these, people were even more desperate to grasp at any potential lifeline. Those who wanted to believe would believe. They deserved to be duped. Xiao Ran had no interest in playing the Good Samaritan. With his capabilities, simply refraining from doing evil was already his greatest act of kindness. Time to provoke my ex-wife a little. Xiao Ran mused. The Jiang family had always been meticulous penny pinchers, never stockpiling much. Lu Mei would go to the supermarket every evening to find discounted, less-than-fresh vegetables. So, apart from rice, the Jiang family had almost no stored food. In his previous life, during those 10-odd days, Xiao Ran and the others had mostly eaten plain rice with pickled mustard greens. In Jun, in normal times, he was so stingy he'd let the faucet drip slowly into a bucket to avoid turning the water meter, essentially freeloading off the state. But after the cataclysm, this habit had saved their lives by providing drinking water. At noon, Xiao Ran laid out a table full of dishes, then piled up a mountain of instant noodles and bread. He took a few photos, including one of leopard eating steak, and posted them on a social media feed, visible only to Jiang Wan. He captioned it, "Good thing I'm a homebody and prepared some supplies in advance, huh?" He had checked. His ex-wife hadn't blocked him. She was likely trying to monitor him through his feed, so she would definitely see it. After lunch, he went to the garage to walk the dog. There were still many people around, but compared to yesterday's liveliness, the atmosphere was much more oppressive. Everyone wore unconcealed expressions of worry, especially those whose family members had gone to work and hadn't returned, fearing they lacked food and warmth. The outside temperature today had dropped to -5 degrees Celsius. Every household had their heating on. Otherwise, they'd have to wrap themselves in several blankets and still shiver uncontrollably. But by the day after tomorrow, the power supply would be cut, and the temperature would plummet to -15 degrees Celsius. That's when true despair would set in. After walking the dog, Xiao Ran returned home. The disaster group chat wasn't as lively as before. People had become more pragmatic, starting to trade and sell supplies. However, prices had inflated at least tenfold, leading to accusations of price gouging and exploiting neighbors during a national crisis. Xiao Ran chuckled and shook his head. People buying supplies at 10 or even 20 times the price now might be called fools, but in another 2 days, those selling them would regret it bitterly. What use was money? Absolutely none. So, being able to buy supplies with money now was practically getting them for free. Xiao Ran scrolled through the group chat, found Han Yun's account, and sent her a friend request. Unsurprisingly, he was rejected. Xiao Ran didn't send another one, just smiled. He'd only sent the friend request as a little reminder for Han Yun. Then he posted a photo in the group, 10 boxes of instant noodles and 20 cases of water. In no time, he was not only being tagged and mentioned like crazy in the group, but also received numerous friend requests. Xiao Ran ignored them. I'm just innocently showing off my wealth, that's all. Meanwhile, Jiang Wan had, of course, seen Xiao Ran's social media post. When she saw the mountain of food, she practically drooled. And seeing a mere mutton gnawing on a steak made her want to strangle Xiao Ran. Such a waste. An outrageous waste. Think about what she had been eating for over a day. Plain rice and pickled mustard greens. Now, even a dog was eating better than her. And when she saw Xiao Ran also post a photo in the group chat, showing off his wealth, she was even more furious. That food should be mine. How dare you post in the group chat and make everyone else covet it? No, she had to change her strategy and start sucking up to Xiao Ran again. Before it was for money. Now, she wanted both the money and the food. Jiang Wan, you damn girl, get your ass out here. Zhang Yujun yelled, banging on her door. Jiang Wan's expression turned ugly. They had argued all last night. Wasn't he going to let her off today? However, she now had a plan. You want food? You'll have to rely on me. She composed herself and walked out with the air of a victor. The Chinese have a habit of stockpiling food. At the very least, they'd always have rice. But how many families had a habit of stockpiling water? Especially those with water purifiers installed. They could just turn on the tap and drink directly, so naturally, they wouldn't think to store water. Han Yun's family was like this. They didn't have a water dispenser, so naturally, they wouldn't have barreled purified water either. They had a few bottles of soft drinks, but those were nearly gone from yesterday to now. She wasn't craving food, but she had an intense thirst for drinking water. For a moment, she really wanted to accept Xiao Ran's friend request again. But she resisted. How could she bow her head to this scoundrel? Besides, didn't she know exactly what he was thinking and what his intentions were? If she wanted Xiao Ran's water, he would definitely demand she sleep with him. Was she that cheap to sell herself for a few bottles of water? Sister-in-law, did you see someone post pictures of food and fresh water in the group chat? A beautiful young woman ran over, her face alight with excitement. Her name was Zhang Jingya, Lin Youhua's younger sister. She was about to graduate from university and had come to Sioux City to find a job, so she was temporarily staying with them. She planned to move out once she found a job and got paid. Hanya nodded, then immediately said, "He's not a good person. Don't you dare go looking for him." Zhang Jingyan nodded thoughtfully, but her eyes darted around. What's the big deal? She could just spend a little more money to buy it, right? What else could happen? That evening, after Xiao Ran finished eating, he went to walk his dog again. Baozi was used to being wild. If he didn't get a few walks a day, he couldn't burn off his excess energy. When they reached the underground parking garage, he saw that the number of people there had dwindled even further. Yesterday, there were still quite a few people square dancing, but today, there wasn't a single one. Firstly, no one was in the mood, and secondly, it was truly too cold. Only a scattered few remained. However, when these people saw Xiao Ran, they immediately surrounded him. "Xiao Ran, do you have any extra food and fresh water? Sell some to me. I'll buy some too. Name your price. As long as it's not too outrageous, I'll take however much you have. Everyone needs food and water. How can it all go to you?" Before Xiao Ran could even reply, the group started arguing amongst themselves. Only when they had argued themselves out did they look back at Xiao Ran. The supplies belonged to Xiao Ran. What was the point of them fighting to the death? Xiao Ran smiled and shook his head. "Sorry, I only have a little bit myself. There's no telling how long this disaster will last. I need to keep it for myself." At this, everyone became annoyed. "If you weren't going to sell, why did you post it in the group chat?" "Xiao Ran, we're all neighbors. You can't just watch us die, can you?" "Exactly. Are you just going to stand by and watch us starve and die of thirst? How can someone be so cruel? Aren't you afraid of having a son born without an asshole? Someone with a particularly vicious tongue spat, directly targeting Xiao Ran's supposed son. No wonder your wife gave birth to a bastard." "Damn it." Xiao Ran raised an eyebrow. Buying and selling was a matter of mutual consent, especially during a disaster like this. If I'm willing to sell you food, that's me being kind, me being generous. If I don't sell, that's just my prerogative. What can you say about it? And now you're here, blowing things out of proportion, even insulting me and reopening old wounds? That I cannot tolerate. Xiao Ran glanced at the man, then at the woman beside him, probably his wife. She looked to be just under 30, decent-looking, with a truly excellent figure, well-endowed and curvy, with a slender waist. Even her winter clothes couldn't hide her exquisite lines. He smiled at the young wife. "Want something to eat and drink? Come to my place." Xiao Ran, the man with the foul mouth, naturally flew into a rage. "Are you trying to steal my wife right in front of me? You're too arrogant." He reached out, intending to grab Xiao Ran by the collar. Xiao Ran executed a swift counter-grappling move, seizing his arm, twisting it, and with a sharp crack, dislocated the man's arm. Baozi was also extremely fierce. Seeing someone try to harm his master, he immediately pounced, sinking his teeth into the man's calf. It was a vicious bite. With Xiao Ran's current combat strength, taking on 3 or even 4 opponents wouldn't be a problem. And if he used his alternate dimension, he could slaughter everyone in the entire residential complex, not just once, but dozens of times over. Ah, the foul-mouthed man screamed. Actually, the dislocated arm wasn't that painful, but Baozi's bite was agonizing, causing cold sweat to bead on his forehead. Scram, Xiao Ran said coldly. Serves you right for running your mouth. In times like these, when law, order, and even morality were beginning to crumble, you still dared to provoke me? Truly courting death. He released his grip, but Baozi, fiercely loyal, still held on, refusing to let go. A loyal dog. Xiao Ran was quite pleased. In the apocalypse, dogs were indeed more loyal than humans. Give them a bite to eat, and they won't betray you. Conversely, give a human a bite to eat, and they might covet all your supplies, scheming how to kill you, and take everything you have. Baozi, let go, Xiao Ran said to the dog. His meat isn't tasty. I'll give you steak when we get back. Receiving his master's command, Baozi finally released his bite. But when the others heard this, they almost fainted from anger. Listen to that. Letting a dog eat steak? Every household here was facing a massive food shortage, and you're letting your dog eat steak? This was too damn infuriating. Xiao Ran, not only did you commit assault, but you also incited your dog to attack. The foul-mouthed man was drenched in cold sweat. I'm telling you, if you don't compensate me until you're bankrupt, this matter isn't over. Xiao Ran burst out laughing. Then call the police. Xiao Ran, do you really think this disaster will never end? Someone nearby couldn't stand it anymore and also questioned Xiao Ran. Once the disaster is over, people like you and wicked deeds like this will definitely be brought to justice. Xiao Ran couldn't be bothered with him. Was he the one who started it? Wrong. He was defending himself. Forget it, why bother with so much? He looked at the young wife again and smiled. You can come to my place anytime. But as for what you have to pay, you understand. With that, he strode off, continuing to walk his dog. Arrogant. Too arrogant. Everyone was seething, trembling with a mixture of anger and helplessness. But they didn't stop to think. Xiao Ran owed them nothing. They were the ones who had approached him. And when they couldn't buy supplies, they insisted on blaming him. Who was going to coddle them? So, yes, people are selfish, and a natural disaster undoubtedly magnifies the selfishness in human nature. Xiao Ran returned home after walking his dog. 2 days had passed. People were already growing restless. And the final blow that would drive everyone to despair would be the massive power outage starting the day after tomorrow. First, residential electricity would be cut, then the cell towers. Even if phones still had battery, they'd become useless ornaments. In such circumstances, panic would undoubtedly be amplified to the extreme. There would be no trust left between neighbors. Every household would shut its doors, seeing everyone else as a potential threat. And all this would take just a little over 3 days. Natural disaster, day 3. Xiao Ran woke up naturally. He brushed his teeth, washed his face, then took out breakfast for himself and gave Baozi 2 large meat buns. He couldn't let Baozi eat steak every day. A balanced diet was important. Baozi had been astray before, so he developed the good habit of not being a picky eater. In fact, just being able to eat his fill was a luxury for him. So, whether it was steak or meat buns, he ate with great relish. Watching Baozi wolf down his food, Xiao Ran himself felt a pang of hunger and quickly finished his bowl of shrimp noodles. Then he drank some milk. Baozi got some too. The dog wasn't fully grown yet, so more milk would help him grow strong. Finally, Xiao Ran finished his breakfast with a plate of fruit. He checked the group chat again. It was full of negative energy. This was the 3rd day, but the hail hadn't stopped. The dense fog showed no signs of dissipating, and there was still no sign of government rescue. Everyone was just eating through their reserves, facing the prospect of running out of water and food. For now, though, people were just grumbling. In another 2 days, they'd start looting. So much for golden neighbors and silver relatives. When you're starving and dying of thirst, you'd rob anyone. The loss of humanity was just a thought away. Ding! Xiao Ran received a message. It was from Jiang Wan. Xiao Ran wasn't surprised. He had flexed his wealth on social media yesterday, and Jiang Wan was only contacting him today. He actually thought she was a bit late. Was Jiang Wan trying to act reserved? Xiao Ran, can you give me another chance? This disaster has struck, and it might last for a very, very long time. So I'm definitely not after your money. Please believe that I'm sincere, okay? A moment later, she sent another message. Can I come over to your place tonight? Here it comes, here it comes. Xiao Ran sneered. My venomous ex-wife. Do you think I don't know what you're plotting? I'll think about it, he replied. The Jiang family home. After seeing Xiao Ran's reply, a cold smile appeared on Jiang Wan's face. He took the bait, she said. Jiang Yujun snorted heavily. That little bastard dared to humiliate me in public back then. Let's see how I deal with him this time. Jiang Gang was also rubbing his palms together, looking very excited. Jiang Wan nodded. Everything according to plan. I'll trick him into opening the door, and Dad and little brother will immediately rush in and subdue Xiao Ran. Lin Meiying still looked a little scared. If we do this, what if the disaster ends and Xiao Ran goes to the police? Jiang Wan wasn't worried at all. Given the current situation, this disaster definitely won't end anytime soon. So a lot of people will probably die this time. There will surely be many others like me, doing similar things. The law doesn't punish the masses. They'll never single us out for reckoning. Besides, if we just kill Xiao Ran, how can he report us then? Kill him? Even old Jiang Yujun shivered. He hadn't expected his daughter to say something so ruthless. But how could he know? Jiang Wan had even schemed to kill her own biological son. Now that disaster had struck, would she be afraid to kill someone else? Especially Xiao Ran, an object of her intense hatred. Anyway, if you don't want to starve to death, you'd better do a good job tonight, Jiang Wan said finally. Jiang Yujun and his son couldn't help but nod. The thought of eating plain rice with pickled vegetables every day was driving them crazy. Right, if I'm going to starve to death, why should I be afraid of committing a crime? Ding. Xiao Ran received a friend request. He was about to ignore it but saw the note. I'm Han Yun's sister-in-law, Zhang Jingya. Xiao Ran's interest was piqued, and he accepted the friend request. Hey, Mr. Moneybag Xiao, do you have a lot of food and drinks? Zhang Jingya immediately sent a message. Not a huge amount, but enough to eat, Xiao Ran replied. Can you sell me some? Zhang Jingya asked again. Yeah, right now, food and fresh water are life. Tell me, who would sell their own life? Xiao Ran said deliberately, instantly elevating the importance of food and water. As important as life itself. But was he exaggerating? No, not at all. With tomorrow's power outage, everyone would come to a realization. The disaster isn't going to end. Rescue isn't coming. So, how incredibly important were food and fresh water? Zhang Jingya took a while to reply. Then what will it take for you to give me food and drink? I'm about to die of hunger and thirst. Send a picture over. Turn off the beauty filter. Don't add any other filters, or you'll bear the consequences yourself. Ding. A moment later, Xiao Ran received a photo. It was taken at a scenic spot. A pretty woman was leaning against a rock, making a V sign with her fingers. Her looks were an 80 out of 100, and her figure was also an 80. Not goddess level, but definitely a beauty. All right, come over. You know where I am, right? Xiao Ran replied. I'll be right there. The phone went silent. A little while later, thump, 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 someone knocked on the basement door. Xiao Ran first checked the surveillance cameras. He had installed not just one, but 3, covering the entire passageway, leaving absolutely no blind spots. There was only one woman, dressed in thick winter clothes. It was Zhang Jingya, looking almost identical to the person in the photo. Xiao Ran smiled and opened the door. Zhang Jingya walked in, and Xiao Ran closed the door behind her. Wow, it's so warm in here, Zhang Jingya exclaimed immediately, taking off her coat. Her figure was genuinely good, but still not comparable to Han Yun's. Thinking of Han Yun, Xiao Ran felt a stir within him. When would he finally get to taste that delicacy? Zhang Jingya didn't notice. Her gaze was already drawn to the food on the table nearby. There weren't many dishes, but there was meat, fish, vegetables, and a bowl of soup, chicken soup. She couldn't help but get excited and said to Xiao Ran, Is this for me? Xiao Ran smiled. That's right, but whether you get to eat it depends on your performance. Zhang Jingya bit her lip, seemingly making a difficult decision. After a long moment, she nodded slightly. Over an hour later, Xiao Ran gave Zhang Jingya an extra 2 packs of instant noodles and 2 bottles of water, then sent her away. He wouldn't let any woman stay overnight in his safe house. As Zhang Jingya walked out of the room, tears fell from her eyes. Back in university, she was at least a campus belle, pursued by countless admirers, showered with attention. But now, however, feeling the weight of the mineral water and instant noodles tucked into her clothes, a look of satisfaction spread across her face. Survive first. Only then do you have the right to talk about anything else. Xiao Ran felt a wave of relief wash over him. Indeed, bottling things up was a recipe for disaster. He went back upstairs, and Leopard immediately started circling him, sniffing him a few times before tilting its head, as if to say, "Why do you smell like someone else?" Xiao Ran chuckled. "Ah, I forgot about your dog's nose. It's incredibly sharp. Leopard, from now on, you're in charge of guarding the house. If you hear any strange noises or smell anyone else, you absolutely have to warn me." Xiao Ran said with a smile, not caring if Leopard understood or not. "Woof woof." To his surprise, Leopard actually barked twice, as if agreeing. "Good boy." Xiao Ran picked up his phone and started scrolling. Both Lu Mei and Lu Susu had sent him messages. The extreme weather had persisted for 2 days, but the situation hadn't improved at all. They were very worried. However, one was living in an apocalypse shelter, and the other had received a large amount of supplies from Xiao Ran, enough to last at least 2 or 3 months. Xiao Ran glanced through his chats. All sorts of groups had become lively. For instance, in the work group, many people were trapped at the company and were now, naturally, crying for help. Even long-silent elementary school, middle school, high school, and university alumni groups were buzzing. Clearly, everyone was panicking, trying any channel to send out distress signals. Naturally, Xiao Ran couldn't help them. He himself wanted to go out and find gasoline and diesel, but he didn't dare make a move in such dense fog. He'd get into a car accident in minutes. The daytime passed in boredom. Night fell. The entire underground parking garage was empty and desolate. The temperature here was too low, and no one wanted to come down to freeze. The fewer people there were, the colder it got, creating a vicious cycle. Suddenly, a group of 4 people appeared silently. They tiptoed, afraid of making any sound. But the more they tried to be quiet, the louder their shoes echoed in the silent garage, making the 4 of them glare at each other, each thinking the other's footsteps were too heavy. It was Jiang Wan's family. Finally, they reached Xiao Ran's villa. A passageway led to the villa's basement. Of course, this was a private area, blocked by a door. Jiang Wan had Zheng Yujun and Zheng Gang hide by the wall, ready to rush in and subdue Xiao Ran the moment the door opened. Then she knocked. Before setting out, she had already called Xiao Ran. In the basement, Xiao Ran watched the surveillance monitors. The Zheng family's little scheme was completely exposed. They would never have guessed that Xiao Ran had not only installed surveillance but 3 cameras covering the entire passageway. As expected, the whole family had come. They were here to take him down, perhaps even kill him, and usurp his home. Xiao Ran smiled and opened the door. Zheng Yujun and Zheng Gang immediately charged in. Clang! Bang! In just an instant, 2 figures were sent flying back out. Who else could it be but the father and son duo, Zheng Yujun and Zheng Gang? Then, Xiao Ran walked out, arms crossed, looking at Jiang Wan with a mocking gaze. Such enthusiasm! The whole family came to visit. Jiang Wan was dumbfounded. She had been married to Xiao Ran for 4 years. Even if she had been cold and indifferent towards him, how could she not know his capabilities? How could he possibly be this strong? Xiao Ran retrieved a baseball bat from beside the door, actually from his subspace, a cruel smile playing on his lips. Your whole family came over, and you even rushed in when I opened the door, trying to control me. Heh, don't tell me you're planning to take over my house. What does that song go? For friends, we have good wine, but for jackals, we have shotguns. Xiao Ran's gaze hardened, and he swung the baseball bat down. Thwack! Crack! Zheng Gang was the first to scream, his arm brutally broken by the bat. The pain turned his face white, and cold sweat poured down. Xiao Ran wore a chilling, cruel smile. How much had this former brother-in-law leached off him? He continued, another swing of the bat. Stop hitting him! Stop hitting him! Lin Meiying rushed over, shielding her son with her body. She didn't care about her daughter, but her son was her lifeline. If you have the guts, kill me instead, the old woman shrieked defiantly. Did he dare? Thwack! Xiao Ran didn't hesitate, bringing the bat down hard. Was there anything good about the Zheng family? No. Besides, in his previous life, when his family was ruined, hadn't Lin Meiying played a part? If Xiao Ran had the ability to resurrect people, he would undoubtedly kill all 4 members of the Zheng family, revive them, then kill them again, and revive them again. How could he vent his anger without killing them 100 times over? For now, he had to hold back, be careful not to deliver a fatal blow. How could he let them die so easily? A heavy blow landed, and Lin Meiying cried out, fainting directly. Xiao Ran didn't stop. He swung at Zheng Yujun too. The old bastard also screamed as Xiao Ran shattered his right arm. It wasn't over. Xiao Ran fixed his gaze on Zheng Wan. Zheng Wan froze for a moment, then screamed and, regardless of anything else, turned to flee. Xiao Ran lunged forward, catching up in a single stride. Thwack! The bat struck Zheng Wan's chest. A distinct pop-pop sound could be heard. Her implants had ruptured. Even so, Jiang Wan's face was deathly pale, and she almost couldn't catch her breath. Xiao Ran tossed out 3 packs of instant noodles and a bottle of water. Why was he being so kind? Wrong. He wasn't being kind at all. First, he couldn't bear for the Zheng family to die too quickly. Second, with 4 people, 3 packs of noodles, and 1 bottle of water, how would they divide it? If you want more food in the future, come back and take another beating, Xiao Ran said coolly, his body casting a long shadow that fell across Jiang Wan's face, making the venomous woman tremble, a chill running through her entire being. Now get lost. Xiao Ran returned to his house with a bat, closed the door, and felt a thrill of vengeance coursing through every pore. He savored the memory of beating the Zheng family. Unfortunately, he couldn't hit them a few more times. It might kill them, and he wasn't ready for that yet. He wanted to torment them for a few more days. Sigh. So, he could only wait for them to recover from their injuries. For now, let them fight tooth and nail over the food. He eagerly anticipated their internal strife. Back on the second floor, he video called Lu Mei and Lu Susu separately. The power was going out tomorrow, so for a long time, perhaps forever, he wouldn't be able to see these 2 women again. This was a sort of farewell. By the way, Xiao Ran, do you have a satellite phone? Lu Mei suddenly asked. Yeah, and I both think that if this disaster continues, the power supply will definitely be affected, and then we won't be able to contact each other. Yia has a satellite phone here, do you? True preppers, indeed. How could they not have a satellite phone ready? Xiao Ran smiled. I'm using a Huawei Mate 60. It was a satellite communication terminal, not just a phone. A night passed. The apocalypse entered its 4th day, and it was the most despairing day yet. Today, the power would go out. Outside, it was over 10 degrees below 0 Celsius. How could people survive without air conditioning? If they had been prepared, they might have built a traditional heated bed stove or something similar, but the disaster had struck suddenly. For city dwellers, this was undoubtedly a cause for utter despair. From today onwards, civilization, order, and morality would completely collapse. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to call today the true prelude to the apocalypse. He remembered that in his previous life, the power had gone out around 12 noon. He wondered if it would be different this time. It probably wouldn't be. No point dwelling on it. Even if the power didn't go out today, it would tomorrow or the day after. With no one maintaining the power stations, how could they possibly keep running? It was just a matter of sooner or later. He played with Leopard, and Leopard loved playing with him, jumping and scampering about. Though energetic, it didn't destroy the house, which greatly endeared it to Xiao Ran. He preferred these hardy local dogs, capable of guarding the home, rather than bringing home a demanding master. Standing at the window, he looked outside. It was a blanket of fog, dim and gloomy. It would be like this for at least the next 10 days. Who knew when it would clear up? Xiao Ran suddenly yearned for the sun. Soon it was noon. Xiao Ran ate his meal. Leopard was also feasting heartily. Suddenly, the lights flickered and other electrical appliances collectively shorted out. Xiao Ran understood immediately. The power was out. However, Xiao Ran had already connected his backup power source, storage batteries. He also had a generator, but it required diesel to run, and although Xiao Ran had some diesel prepared, it was far from enough to keep the generator running day and night. But he had also prepared a large number of storage batteries, all fully charged, over 1,000 of them, enough to last him a very long time. At this moment, his phone exploded with messages again. The power was indeed out, but many cell towers had backup power and could last another day or 2. But what damn good was a working phone? Air conditioners and electric blankets couldn't be used. People would freeze to death. The group chats were filled with cries of suffering and complaints. The power outage was the last straw that broke the camel's back. It was over, truly over. It had been 3 whole days. If rescue was coming, it would have arrived by now. Now, even the power was gone. In a few days, even phone signals would disappear. Then, wouldn't it be a case of calling out to heaven and earth with no response? Xiao Ran shook his head. Next, everyone would become violent due to despair. And for some evil individuals, this disaster would unleash the wickedness in their genes, because they no longer needed to have any fear or scruples. With even communications down, everyone was essentially back in a primitive society. If they committed the most heinous acts, who would know, and who would punish them? The apocalypse, for ordinary people, was hell. But for bad people, it was their paradise for committing evil. Knock, knock, knock. Someone was knocking on the basement door, and Xiao Ran also received an alert on his phone. The surveillance system would notify him when it detected people. It was Zhang Jingya. Had she come begging for food again? Xiao Ran went downstairs. After confirming she was alone, he let her in. The two had a tacit understanding. One prepared food, while the other started taking off her coat. However, today Xiao Ran first took a drop of her blood and put it into a very simple tester. Beep. It showed green. This was to test for sexually transmitted diseases. Green meant negative, red meant positive. Very good. Then he could let himself go. Zhang Jingya had initially wanted to refuse, but after Xiao Ran placed a roast chicken in front of her, she silently began to eat. With the multi-million-dollar project successfully completed, Xiao Ran gave her an emergency contraceptive pill. He had no desire to bring a child into this desperate world. And even if he were to have one, it wouldn't be with Zhang Jingya. Zhang Jingya said nothing, merely took the pill. As she was leaving, Xiao Ran once again gave her 2 packs of instant noodles and 2 bottles of water, ensuring she wouldn't go hungry. Moreover, Xiao Ran also thoughtfully helped charge her phone. Why? It would naturally be useful. Zhang Jingya dragged her exhausted body away. Xiao Ran checked the time. It had taken over an hour. No wonder he was so tired. Going upstairs, Leopard once again sniffed him all over. Why did its master smell like someone else again? And why had it been confined to the first floor? Unfortunately, dogs can't ask questions. Leopard circled Xiao Ran, wagging its tail frantically. Xiao Ran understood and smiled. All right, I'll take you down for a walk. Speaking of which, you're not one of those goofy snow dogs. The garage is so cold. Why aren't you afraid? He took Leopard to the underground garage. To his surprise, while it had been cold and deserted the past 2 days, there were now more people, mostly elderly men and women. The power was out, their homes weren't warm, and there was no TV to watch. What else were the elderly to do? So, everyone might as well gather in the underground garage. Not only was it spacious, but they could also chat with each other, even discuss things. As the saying goes, 2 heads are better than 1. Perhaps they could brainstorm some solutions. Seeing Xiao Ran approach, an old man immediately perked up and, whoosh, darted over to block Xiao Ran's path. Xiao Ran was taken aback. Can I help you? This old man, surnamed Ma, was over 60. Before retiring, he was a minor supervisor in a state-owned enterprise and carried a great deal of official airs. He usually swaggered around the residential complex, and if he encountered anything unsatisfactory, regardless of whether he was right or wrong, he would launch into a tirade. His reputation in the community was terrible. Old man Ma coughed. Comrade Little Xiao, is it? Xiao Ran couldn't help but chuckle. Starting with Little Xiao. What a condescending posture. I'm Xiao Ran, he said calmly. Old man Ma grunted through his nose. Of course, he recognized Xiao Ran. Otherwise, why would he have rushed over to stop him? He looked at Xiao Ran haughtily and said, just now, a few of us old comrades were discussing the future of our community. We unanimously believe that this disaster will last for a long time, so it's even more crucial for everyone to work together and overcome these difficulties. Xiao Ran said nothing, just looked at old man Ma. These words were clearly just the preamble. Ahem, ahem. Old man Ma coughed twice more. This seemed to be a common habit of officials, always coughing before speaking. Then he continued. First, we must avoid wasting resources. Comrade Little Xiao, you should have a lot of food and bottled water, right? You should hand it over to us for safekeeping. We will distribute it according to need. When the disaster is over, we will definitely report your contributions to the party and the state. Your merits will not be overlooked. Xiao Ran burst out laughing. Old man Ma, are you playing me for a fool? Hand over my food to you for unified distribution? Why don't you go try and see who would willingly give up their food and clean water right now? You might as well just rob me outright. Old man Ma was so enraged and humiliated by the retort that he almost fainted. For a long moment, he could only point a trembling finger at Xiao Ran, unable to speak. Old Ma was so sharply rebuffed that the other seniors immediately jumped to his defense. Kid, don't think you're all that just because you have a bit of dirty money. You think you can disrespect your elders. Young man, we've eaten more salt than you've eaten rice. Listen to an old lady's advice. Hurry up and apologize to Director Ma, and just do as he says. Don't go against the authorities, or you'll regret it. The elderly folks surrounded Xiao Ran, all talking at once. Xiao Ran looked at one of the old women, his expression serious. I'm 27. You're 70 at most. Even if we say you're 3 times my age, I eat 3 bowls of rice a day. So, does that mean you eat at least 1 bowl of salt every day? I was just using a figure of speech. The old woman was left speechless, thinking Xiao Ran was utterly unreasonable. And as for you, Xiao Ran shot back at each of them in turn, leaving the seniors so furious they were speechless for a long moment. Nothing left to say, huh? Xiao Ran smirked, then turned and strode off with Leopard. Leopard had grown impatient long ago. Hadn't its master brought it down for a walk? Why was he wasting so much time bickering with these old people? Now that Xiao Ran was finally leaving, it immediately bounded off, running around joyfully. By the time Leopard had tired itself out, Xiao Ran was pretty exhausted too. He saw it as good training, though, a chance to practice his long-distance running. He headed home, washed up, and got ready for dinner. He habitually picked up his phone. Good grief, another flood of friend requests. He was about to ignore them all when a familiar profile picture caught his eye. Han Yun. So she couldn't hold out any longer? He didn't play games with her and accepted the request immediately. A man ought to be magnanimous, after all. But even though he'd accepted, Xiao Ran didn't message her first. Shouldn't the one asking for a favor be the first to speak? After half an hour, a message finally came from Han Yun. Could you spare some food and water? Xiao Ran made her wait another half hour before replying. Sure, but... This time, Han Yun's reply was instant. I can't offer myself to you, but you have to agree to my conditions. Fine. You ask for the sky, and I'll haggle you down to earth. Xiao Ran also replied instantly. Come over. We'll discuss it in person. I'll find a chance, Han Yun replied. Xiao Ran smiled and put his phone aside. Leopard tilted its head, looking at him as if its eyes were full of question marks. We're going to upgrade our meals. Have some seafood, Xiao Ran explained to it. Leopard looked even more bewildered, its doggy face a mask of confusion. Xiao Ran had dinner. Tonight, he opted for barbecue, especially taking out 3 lamb kidneys. Leopard, of course, ate well alongside him. In this apocalypse, Leopard definitely ate better than 99% of the human population. So many people were going hungry. After a while, his phone beeped with a message from Han Yun. I'm here. Xiao Ran smiled and said to Leopard, You be good and wait here. I'll be right back. Leopard panted, its tongue lolling, and lay down on the floor, giving a couple of wags of its tail. Whenever its master went to the basement alone, he tended to stay for a long time. Leopard figured it could take a nap. Xiao Ran went down to the basement and first checked the surveillance feed. Even though his combat strength was off the charts, caution had become second nature to him. Xiao Ran opened the door, and a figure slipped inside. These clothes look familiar. Weren't they the ones Zhang Jingya had worn before? He understood. They must belong to Han Yun. Zhang Jingya had fled here at the end of May. Would she have packed winter clothes? So, naturally, she could only have worn Han Yun's. It seemed this winter outfit was the warmest one available. Zhang Jingya had chosen it, and now Han Yun had too. The thought was rather amusing. Xiao Ran closed the door. For a moment, the atmosphere was somewhat awkward. Xiao Ran, naturally, was in no hurry. He wasn't the one starving or dying of thirst. Han Yun bit her lip and said, I want 50 kilograms of rice, a case of water, and you have to help me carry it to the 16th floor. She'd managed the last flight of stairs herself, asking for the sky, just as he'd expected. Xiao Ran held up one finger. I'll let you eat your fill here and drink as much water as you like. When you leave, I can give you 1 pack of instant noodles and 1 bottle of water. Han Yun refused. Then I'm leaving, she said, moving towards the door. Xiao Ran made no move to stop her. Han Yun gritted her teeth, stopped, and turned back. 25 kilograms of rice and half a case of water. She'd cut her demand in half. Xiao Ran shook his head. Depending on your performance, I can give you a few extra packs of noodles and bottles of water when you leave. If you don't agree, then leave, he said calmly. Han Yun pressed her red lips together tightly. Her body stock still, as if under a binding spell. Just when Xiao Ran thought she'd turned to stone, Han Yun finally managed to force out a single word. All right. Xiao Ran went behind a screen and retrieved several dishes from his dimensional storage. Meat, vegetables, soup, and a bowl of white rice. He gestured for Han Yun to come over. When the alluring woman saw the spread on the table, she couldn't help but lick her lips. She was ravenous. Eat up, Xiao Ran said. He wasn't in any hurry, simply sitting to the side and scrolling through his phone. Currently, the internet was a hotbed of anxiety. Power outages weren't everywhere, but they affected most areas. If this continued, what would become of them? Was the apocalypse truly upon them? He scrolled for quite some time before a distinct burp reached his ears. Xiao Ran looked up at Han Yun. Her pretty face was flushed crimson, and she looked terribly embarrassed. She had eaten herself completely full. Xiao Ran smiled. Shall we begin? A long-held wish finally fulfilled. An hour later, Han Yun emerged from the room. Xiao Ran gave her 3 packs of instant noodles and 3 bottles of purified water. She intended to take them back to Lin Yue. This woman truly loved her husband. Lin Yue was a gambling addict, so much so that even his own parents had given up on him, yet she remained stubbornly devoted. Xiao Ran thought her single-mindedness bordered on foolishness. Still, what did it have to do with him? Xiao Ran smiled and went back upstairs. Baozi, though no longer surprised by his master's comings and goings, still trotted over, wagging its tail and sniffing. Huh, why did his master smell like someone else today? Baozi looked at Xiao Ran with perplexed dog eyes. Xiao Ran chuckled and tapped Baozi lightly on the head. Are you planning on keeping tabs on me now? Meanwhile, Han Yun returned to her own apartment. At her doorstep, she first straightened her clothes, making sure nothing looked out of place, then used her fingerprint to unlock the door and went inside. As soon as she entered, she called out, "Honey, dinner's ready." Lin Yue came out, a skeptical look on his face. "Do we even have any food left in the house?" "I bought some from the neighbors," Han Yun said casually, her expression perfectly natural. It had to be said, every woman was a natural-born actress. Lin Yue didn't suspect a thing. "You still have money on you?" he asked. Han Yun flashed her left hand. "I gave him my gold ring." Lin Yue looked a bit regretful. "That ring cost over 10,000 back when you bought it, but forget it. In times like these, money, gold, and jewels probably won't be worth much anymore. It's good if we can trade them for some food." He immediately cheered up, because his gambling debts wouldn't need to be repaid either. Just a few days ago, he'd been worried sick with people splashing paint on his door every day. Calling the police was useless. The fact was he owed money, and, as long as he wasn't personally threatened, the police found it hard to take action. But after the cataclysm began, he'd been sleeping soundly every night. He even chuckled, saying, "That Xiao 500 mil is the unluckiest one." His money hadn't even warmed his pockets before this disaster struck. Serves him right. Now he can't spend any of it, no matter how much he has. Nouveau riche. Serves him right. He was still full of envy, jealousy, and hatred for Xiao Ran, and he still held a grudge about what happened in the elevator that day. Hearing Xiao Ran's name, Han Yun's heart skipped a beat. She thought her husband was insinuating something, but then realized he'd just mentioned him casually. She forced a smile, but inwardly, she was laughing bitterly. The food and pure water came from that nouveau riche you're talking about, and he even slept with your wife. "I'll go cook the noodles," she said. Lin Yue waved his hand dismissively. "Go on." Very chauvinistic. After a while, the distinctive aroma of instant noodles wafted out. Zhang Jingya came out of her room. "Wow, that smells amazing." Lin Yue nodded. "Your sister-in-law is such a spendthrift. She traded a gold ring for 3 packs of instant noodles and 3 bottles of water." Zhang Jingya, however, said, "Food and water are what matter most right now. You can't eat gold and silver, and banknotes are only good for wiping your ass." "A young lady should speak more elegantly," Lin Yue frowned. Zhang Jingya stuck out her tongue. "Got it, bro." A little later, Han Yun brought out the noodles, but there were only 2 bowls. "You two eat." "I'm not hungry," Han Yun said. It was true. She had eaten her fill at Xiao Ran's place, even feeling a bit stuffed. Zhang Jia didn't stand on ceremony and took a bowl, starting to eat. But a question arose in her mind. These noodles, weren't they the same brand Xiao Ran had given her? Of course, they were White Elephant Instant Noodles, a well-known brand, so she didn't suspect anything further. The Qin residence. "Honey, are we really going to do this?" Qin Dongfang's wife asked. Qin Dongfang nodded. "We're running out of food, and there are 5 of us. If we don't take a gamble, are we supposed to just starve or die of thirst? Besides, we're robbing that bastard." His eyes blazed with anger. "My son just casually took one of your takeout orders, that's all. Did you really have to set a deliberate trap, send my dad to the hospital, and then make us pay 80,000? My mom couldn't stand it, and splashed some crap on your door, and you retaliated by banging on the wall all night, not letting anyone rest. Now our chance has come. You think I won't destroy you?" Granny Qin also slammed the table. "That son of a bitch really is a piece of work." He even deliberately flaunted his wealth in the group chat. When old Ma and the others asked to buy food from him, he completely ignored them. Clearly, he doesn't care if any of us live or die. Qin Dongfang nodded. "When we rob him, we can say we're robbing the rich to feed the poor, ridding the community of a menace." Having found themselves a righteous justification, the 4 adults of the Qin family were full of fighting spirit. Even the child was holding a pair of scissors, looking thoroughly menacing. After the takeout incident, his parents had nearly beaten his backside raw, so naturally, he hated Xiao Ran to the bone. But not when the 5 family members stopped to reflect. Was any of this really Xiao Ran's fault? Who stole the takeout first? And who, after stealing it, not only didn't apologize, but acted all righteous and aggressive? The family of 5 waited until the dead of night, then quietly set out. Each of them carried a weapon, kitchen knives, hammers, scissors. They climbed the stairs down to the underground garage. It was 11 p.m., and the garage was freezing cold, completely deserted. The five of them shivered as they walked. No matter how cold Suzhou City got in winter, it was usually around -5 degrees Celsius, -8 at the lowest. But now it was -15 degrees. Normal winter clothes couldn't handle this. Even with extra layers, they shivered uncontrollably. It was pitch black, so dark you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Luckily, their phones still had power. Qin Dongfang turned on his phone's flashlight and led the way. Soon, the five of them arrived in front of Xiao Ran's villa. However, looking at the iron gate before them, they stared at each other, dumbfounded. They had only thought about how to deal with Xiao Ran, but they had never considered how they would actually get into his house. Could they smash this iron gate open with the hammers they carried? It wasn't that they underestimated themselves, but they knew they definitely wouldn't succeed even if they hammered away until morning. What do we do? All five were flabbergasted. How about we go back, discuss it some more, and come back tomorrow? Old Man Sheen suggested. The others unanimously agreed. But just as they were about to turn and leave, they heard a click. The gate actually opened automatically, swinging inwards towards them. All five jumped in fright. Old Man Sheen, the most timid of them, nearly stumbled and fell to the ground. The gate was open, but no one came out. Qin Dongfang, mustering his courage, peered inside, but it was pitch black, and he couldn't see a thing. What now? The five looked at each other. Qin Dongfang gritted his teeth. The gate's open. Let's go in. We can't miss this opportunity. This must be an electronic gate, so maybe it malfunctioned? After all, there's a power outage. A malfunction would be perfectly normal, right? Xiao Ran must be asleep. So if we rush in now, he probably won't even know what hit him. By the time he wakes up, he'll be tied up securely, his life and death in our hands. The five of them crept in stealthily, light-footed. After they had all entered, none of them noticed that the iron gate had automatically closed behind them. Click! As soon as a loud click echoed through the room, the five members of the Qin family snapped out of their daze. What was that? Suddenly, a light flicked on, illuminating the entire room. The five of them jolted in shock. What the hell? Is this place haunted? Doors opening and closing on their own? Lights too. Then a lazy voice rang out. What are you all doing here this late at night? It was Xiao Ran. He yawned as he spoke. He'd just been getting ready for bed when an alert from his phone woke him up. The infrared sensors had picked up the intruders, and when he saw the Qin family try to leave, he helpfully opened the door using remote access. Now that they were inside, of course, it was time to shut the door and deal with them. The Qins were stunned at first, but quickly realized what had happened. So he had been the one controlling the lights, the door, all of it. Still, they calmed down right away. Xiao Ran was just one guy. They were five. What do they have to be afraid of? Besides, Xiao Ran didn't even have a weapon. This place still has power. Qin Granny was slow on the uptake, but she was the first to say it out loud. The others quickly caught on and were overjoyed. A house with electricity? It was theirs now. And it's warm too, someone added. They were practically moved to tears. Xiao Ran smiled and offered an explanation. I've got backup batteries hooked up here. That's why there's still power. Also, I've got a fireplace running on wood. Oh, makes sense. The Qins nodded slowly in understanding, then immediately shifted to outrage. What? Were they here for science lesson? Perfect. This villa is ours now. Qin Dongfang brandished the kitchen knife in his hand. Xiao Ran, I'm a reasonable man. I'll give you two options. 1, you walk out that door by yourself. 2, we hack you to pieces and then throw you out. The Qin family burst into laughter. Even the youngest, Qin Kong, was howling, as if Xiao Ran had a choice. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a mockery. You think your hot stuff caused you had money back then? Set us up like that. Now what? Think you can buy your way out? Even bratty little Qin Kong was full of swagger. He pointed his scissors at Xiao Ran. Kneel. Xiao Ran chuckled. Your whole family's really something else. You know what? Forget it. It's late. I need to sleep. Not going to waste my time on you. He raised his hand, shaping it into the form of a gun, and aimed it at Qin Dongfang. Huh, you think a finger gun's going to scare me? Qin Dongfang laughed so hard he was doubled over. What a joke. The guy had lost it. Xiao Ran grinned. Bang. Oh. Qin Dongfang collapsed with a scream as blood erupted from his left thigh. The pain was searing. The rest of the family froze. What the hell just happened? They rushed to help Qin Dongfang up, but the moment they touched him, he howled even louder. Qin Granny turned to Xiao Ran, screaming. What did you do to my son, you bastard? If anything happens to him, I swear I'll kill you. Xiao Ran laughed softly. You people came to my door, threatened to kill me, tried to force me out to die of poison or cold. and now I defend myself, and suddenly I'm a monster. You expect logic from people like this. The only reason they'd backed down before was because Xiao Ran had subdued them with that shockwall device. He raised his gun again, this time aiming at Qin Granny. She started to cower. She knew it was just a hand, but her son had actually been shot somehow. It was terrifying. You wouldn't dare, she shouted, trying to sound bold but trembling. Bang! Xiao Ran whispered the word like a sigh. Before she could even scream, a hole bloomed in her forehead. She dropped dead on the spot. The remaining 4 were paralyzed with fear, drenched in cold sweat. Qin Dongfang forgot even to cry out, trembling like a leaf. Bang! 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 Qin Kong, being just a kid, raised his imaginary gun and fired wildly at Xiao Ran. But Xiao Ran didn't even flinch. He even smiled at the boy. You're cheating. The little brat wasn't done. He charged with the scissors in hand. I'll stab you to death, you old bastard. This kid's beyond saving. Xiao Ran flicked his wrist. Fwhip! A bullet pierced the boy's forehead. He fell backward, lifeless. You pull a weapon on me, you die. Doesn't matter who you are. No. Xiaobao. The Qin daughter-in-law let out a heartbreaking wail. She lifted the kitchen knife and rushed Xiao Ran. Xiao Ran didn't even waste a bullet. He simply opened a dimensional rift. Whoosh! She vanished. What the? Qin old man stared dumbly at the spot where his daughter-in-law had disappeared. Where is she? Where had she gone? Xiao Ran stepped forward. The 2 corpses disappeared as well. Now all eyes were on Xiao Ran. They realized it for sure. He was the one making people vanish. Where did you take them? Qin old man asked, voice trembling. What are you? Are you even human? Xiao Ran gave a short laugh. Human? Devil? Aren't you the ones who snuck into someone's house in the middle of the night with knives and hammers? The father and son had no response. I'll send you off next, Xiao Ran said coldly. Qin old man let out a howl of terror and scrambled to escape. His son? Screw him. He just had to get out alive. But after just a few steps, he vanished. Xiao Ran had opened a dimensional gate in the space ahead of him. It didn't matter if he was running away. He'd walked right into the trap. Only Qin Dongfang remained. Ironically, he was the calmest now. With a bullet in the leg and facing a man who wielded powers beyond comprehension. What hope did he have of surviving? Xiao Ran. What are you really? He asked bitterly. Just wanted to know before he died. Xiao Ran walked up to him, leaned in like he was going to whisper something, then grabbed him and flung him into the dimensional rift. Qin Dongfang disappeared. Gloating to a dead man? What's the point? Xiao Ran looked at the blood-stained floor of the basement and sighed. I should really stop killing people in my own house. If I have to, better just toss them straight into the gate next time. Saves cleanup. But this time, there was no helping it. He pulled out a rag and started wiping. Luckily, he had access to fresh water. Anyone else? That'd be a luxury. These days, water was as precious as food. It took over 10 minutes to scrub the place clean. After that, he had to take another shower before finally climbing back into bed. No more killing at home, he reminded himself again. Chapter 5. The 5th day of the apocalypse began. It was 8 a.m., but the outside world was still blanketed in a murky, dismal haze. Though the hail had lessened in size and frequency, it still fell steadily. A thick layer of ice covered the ground, made even more treacherous by the toxic hailstones, rendering any thought of going outside impossible. No rescue had come. It had been 5 days, and people's patience had completely worn out. A deeper, more suffocating despair now weighed on everyone. The harsh truth was clear. This natural disaster wasn't going to end anytime soon. There would be no rescue. The question haunting everyone now was, how do we survive on our own? Nerves frayed, tempers grew short. Xiao Ran brought Leopard down to the garage. The atmosphere was heavier than usual. Everyone exchanged uneasy, almost hostile glances, as if they were eyeing longtime neighbors not as companions, but as threats. Clearly, from now on, he needed to walk the dog at night instead. If it came to a fight, Xiao Ran had enough bullets stored in his dimensional space to wipe out the entire residential compound several times over. But real life wasn't that simple. No one would come at him in a straightforward brawl. What if someone attacked from behind? You can dodge a blade you see, but not one you don't. Better to play it safe. The dog was just a way to kill boredom, not something worth risking his life for. Besides, Xiao Ran noticed many people were now eyeing him with obvious greed. After flaunting his supplies in the community chat group, he had clearly drawn attention. Not that he cared. Let them try breaching his safe house. It might even add a little excitement to his days. He could even orchestrate some drama of his own. Xiao Ran had long since started planning for this. He was just about to head back with Leopard when he suddenly spotted 3 familiar figures. Lin Yue, his wife Han Yun, and Zhang Jingya. Interesting. When Han Yun and Zhang Jingya saw Xiao Ran, both of them blushed, lowering their heads quickly, clearly afraid the others would notice something. Lin Yue, on the other hand, lit up and walked toward him with a wide grin. "Mr. 5 billion, he called out loudly, making sure everyone nearby could hear him. Many turned and smirked. Sure, they were all going through hell, but wasn't Xiao Ran even more unfortunate? He'd won 5 billion in the lottery, and now, at most, he might have spent a few dozen million before the end hit. The rest? Sitting useless in a frozen bank account. Lin Yue really knew how to hit a sore spot. Striding up to Xiao Ran, Lin laughed and said, "Feeling anxious lately? So much money, but nowhere to spend it. Looks like this disaster won't be over anytime soon, huh? So that's the angle you're going with." Xiao Ran shook his head. Was this the dark side of human nature? You could be suffering, but as long as someone else is worse off, you find joy in it. Ridiculous. As if his useless billions made their lives any better. Did they think his fortune was just sitting there in the bank? He had supplies enough to rival a nation. You want to provoke me? Fine. Don't blame me when I humiliate you right here. But before Xiao Ran could speak, Han Yun hurried to calm her husband. Come on, honey. We're all neighbors going through the same hell. Shouldn't we help each other instead of tearing each other down? Zhang Jingya chimed in quickly. She's right. The two women were visibly nervous, afraid of upsetting Xiao Ran and jeopardizing future trades. After all, the half-pack of instant noodles Lin Yue had eaten that morning. Where did they think it came from? While they tried to rein in Lin Yue, they were also frantically signaling Xiao Ran with their eyes. Don't get mad. We'll talk later. Just please don't blow things up or expose us. At that moment, Leopard sniffed around Han Yun and Zhang Jingya, then wagged his tail enthusiastically, clearly excited. Dogs had keen noses. The scent on his body from their past encounters was still fresh and now recognized. The women instantly realized what was happening. They looked at each other, then back at the overly affectionate dog, who seemed equally excited about both of them. Their cheeks flushed deep red. They got it now. The truth was out, clear as day. They both wished they could crawl into a hole and disappear. What were they supposed to call each other now? Sister wives? Xiao Ran couldn't help but laugh. Who would have thought Leopard would be the one to blow their cover? Not that he minded. He stepped toward Han Yun. Lin Yue immediately stepped in front, blocking him. What do you want with my wife? His wife was stunning, seductive without even trying. He had long lived in paranoid fear that someone would make a move on her. Xiao Ran pushed him aside effortlessly. Lin Yue, with his alcohol-wrecked body, was no match. Xiao Ran leaned in close to Han Yun and whispered, "Come with me, or I'll tell everyone exactly what we've been up to." Han Yun's face went pale. Xiao Ran turned and walked off. Don't think you can have your cake and eat it too. What did you just say to my wife? Lin Yue shouted, enraged. Get back here, damn it. Stop right there. Han Yun shot a quick look at Zhang Jingya, signaling for help. She grabbed Lin's arm and pleaded, Don't get so worked up, honey. It's not worth it. Let's just go home. It's freezing out here. Lin Yue grumbled under his breath, but finally turned and stormed off, still muttering curses. He didn't have the guts to actually fight Xiao Ran. He'd learned that lesson in the elevator incident. Back at their building entrance, Han Yun suddenly said, You go on ahead. I'm going to try and borrow some more food. Lin Yue looked at her suspiciously. After Xiao Ran had whispered something to her, and now she wanted to go off alone. He might be a gambling addict, but he wasn't an idiot. Zhang Jingya quickly stepped in. I'll go with her. That made Lin Yue feel a little better. Fine. Let Jingya go with you. With her cousin along, he figured Han Yun wouldn't dare meet Xiao Ran alone. Han Yun had no choice but to agree. Lin went upstairs, and the two women turned back. The walk was silent and tense. What would happen once they got to Xiao Ran's place? Both of them knew perfectly well. Going alone was one thing, but going together? As sisters-in-law? This was too much. Why don't you head back? Zhang Jingya suggested. She had her reasons. If she went to Xiao Ran's place first, she'd at least get a proper meal. Staying behind meant settling for instant noodles. And she really didn't want instant noodles. She'd already slept with Xiao Ran. Once or 10 times. What difference did it make now? Han Yun was tempted. She was different from Zhang Jingya. Zhang Jingya wasn't married yet and didn't take matters between men and women too seriously. But Han Yun, despite her alluring and captivating appearance, was very conservative in her views, with a strong sense of morality. She was deeply averse to selling her body. It could be said that if it weren't for her husband, she would never have gone to Xiao Ran yesterday. Only, just now, Xiao Ran had specifically asked for her by name. Then I'll wait outside for a bit, she said. Okay. Zhang Jingya also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, this wasn't exactly something to be proud of. So, Zhang Jingya alone entered the passage leading to the basement of Xiao Ran's villa. Even though it was daytime, the garage was incredibly dim, forcing her to take out her phone for light. Xiao Ran had charged her phone earlier, and now it came in handy. She sent Xiao Ran a message, and, upon reaching the entrance, gently knocked on the iron door. Creak! The iron door opened automatically. When Zhang Jingyao walked in, it was naturally bright inside, but Xiao Ran's voice drifted over. Where's Han Yun? Didn't I tell her to come? My sister-in-law is a little embarrassed, Zhang Jingyao quickly explained. How about I come today, and then my sister-in-law can come tomorrow? No, Xiao Ran refused coldly. Helpless, Zhang Jingyao had no choice but to go back out and find Han Yun. Learning that Xiao Ran wanted both of them together, Han Yun's pretty face turned pale, and she nearly fainted. But, thinking of her husband, she forced herself to endure it. For her husband, she would endure. Let's go. She, on the contrary, found her courage, grabbing Zhang Jingya's hand and heading into the passage. This time, before they could knock, the iron door opened directly. Xiao Ran was watching clearly through infrared surveillance. The two women entered, and the iron door locked automatically behind them. Upon entering the basement, warmth immediately enveloped them, and the bright lights gave the two women a feeling of being reborn. Han Yun couldn't help but feel regret. Why was Xiao Ran the one who owned this villa, and not Lin Yue? Go eat, Xiao Ran's voice came. The two women sat at the table and began to eat. At first, they were still reserved, but from yesterday until now, they had only eaten one proper meal. The rest of the time, they could only eat instant noodles. Even though they valued their appearance and ate little to maintain their figures, they had never eaten this little. It was better when they weren't eating. Once they started, they couldn't help but become disheveled in their hunger. Half an hour later, both women were full. Xiao Ran even gave them half an apple each, which thrilled them. They could still eat fruit now, and so fresh. At this moment, Han Yun felt her resolve wavering. Should she just forget about her husband and shamelessly stick with Xiao Ran from now on? But as soon as this thought arose, she quickly cursed herself inwardly. It was just some food. How could she be so shameless and devoid of integrity? Go wash up first, Xiao Ran said. These two women hadn't bathed in days and now had a stale smell about them. Fortunately, the weather was cold. Otherwise, everyone would be reeking. Hearing Xiao Ran's words, Han Yun and Zhang Jingya were both stunned. Are you dreaming? First, the water pipes are all frozen now. No water can flow out. Second, even if there were water, it's contaminated. Who would dare touch it? Xiao Ran walked to the bathroom, turned on the shower head, and hot water cascaded down. He caught some in his hand. There was no scalding sensation at all. Is this purified water? Han Yun couldn't help but exclaim excitedly. Heaven knew how much she loved being clean. Normally, she showered once in the morning and once at night every day. Go on, Xiao Ran waved his hand. The two women looked at each other and, no longer holding back, both walked into the shower. Unfortunately, it was a shower. It would have been even better if they could soak in a bathtub. The bedrooms on the second and third floors had bathtubs, but how could Xiao Ran possibly let them go upstairs? This basement had also been renovated. It had a glass shower stall, a bed, and a dining table, just that the area was a tiny bit small. Halfway through their shower, Xiao Ran went in. When they came out after their shower, they first used a hairdryer to dry their hair. Otherwise, it was so cold outside that wet hair would quickly freeze. Then Xiao Ran gave them a good amount of instant noodles and bread, and even a few sausages. Of course, purified water was definitely included. Both women used their loose winter clothes to hide the food and bottled water. Otherwise, parading around with food would get them robbed in minutes. Right now, one should never overestimate human morality. Han Yun and Zhang Jingya made their way home, their hearts pounding in their chests the entire time. Truth be told, even carrying $1 million in cash before the cataclysm wouldn't have made them this nervous. Back then, society was so orderly. Who would dare rob someone in broad daylight? But now, for a mouthful of food or a sip of water, people would pounce like starving wolves. Once inside, both women put down the food, heaving a collective sigh of relief. Lin Yue, however, frowned. What took you so long? Han Yun looked awkward. Food is so scarce now. They didn't want to sell it first. It took a lot of convincing before they finally agreed. This time, Lin Yue wasn't so easily fooled. Who'd be stupid enough to sell their food and water now? That's their lifeline. Han Yun quickly shot Zhang Jingya a look, signaling her to help back up the lie. But before Zhang Jingya could speak, Lin Yue grabbed Han Yun, sniffed her hair, and his face changed drastically. You bitch. How dare you cheat on me behind my back? He unbuckled his belt and started whipping Han Yun. Zhang Jingya quickly intervened. Brother, she did it for you. Otherwise, you would have starved to death by now. This sentence sent Lin Yue into a complete frenzy. His eyes bloodshot, he stared at Zhang Jingya and, with a crack, whipped her too. Ah! Zhang Jingya cried out, clutching her face in pain. Lin Yue continued whipping them for a while, but beating his wife and sister didn't seem to vent his anger. He snarled, Who's the adulterer? I know it's Xiao Ran, isn't it? Xiao Ran. He recalled bumping into Xiao Ran in the garage earlier, gloatingly mocking him. Now it seemed like a colossal joke. The man had screwed his wife. No wonder Xiao Ran had whispered something in Han Yun's ear. No wonder Han Yun hadn't wanted to come upstairs. She had gone off to sell herself again. That's where yesterday's instant noodles and water came from. No, even before that. Why had Xiao Ran transferred 5,000 to Han Yun that day? You bitch. I'll deal with you when I get back. Lin Yue stormed into the kitchen, grabbed a cleaver, and rushed out. What for? To fight Xiao Ran to the death, of course. What man could tolerate being cuckolded? Seeing this, Han Yun and Zhang Jingya, ignoring their pain, immediately chased after him. But they were no match for Lin Yue in his furious state, and soon they lost sight of him. Speaking of Lin Yue, he charged into the underground garage brandishing the cleaver, looking like he was about to murder someone. People on the path hastily scrambled out of his way. What's going on? Is he going to fight someone to the death? Did someone steal his family's food? Right now, what could be worse than having your food and water stolen? Thump, thump, thump. Lin Yue's eyes blazed with fury, oblivious to everyone else as he strode rapidly towards Xiao Ran's villa. Is he going after Xiao Ran? What beef could he have with Xiao Ran? It's as if his wife cheated on him. Holy crap. The onlookers exchanged glances, and suddenly it all clicked. Han Yun was having an affair, and her lover was Xiao Ran. Such envy. It figured. Han Yun was the renowned beauty of their residential complex. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call her the prettiest. And even more enticing was her figure. Curvy and voluptuous, captivatingly alluring to the bone, an absolute goddess. What man didn't want to sleep with her? But whoever got the chance. Now, Han Yun was actually having an affair with Xiao Ran? Damn, that lucky bastard. Hadn't the cataclysm turned everyone's money into useless numbers? Why would Han Yun still sleep with Xiao Ran? A crowd, their curiosity piqued, began to follow, though they didn't dare get too close, afraid that Lin Yue, seeing red, would recognize no one and attack anyone in his path. Lin Yue entered a long corridor. His phone had been dead for ages, so he had no light. Already fuming, he fumbled along in the dark without slowing down, crashing into a wall, which only made him more enraged and frustrated. He cursed incessantly under his breath. Finally, he felt his way to an iron door and began banging on it with the cleaver. Xiao Ran, you bastard! You dare to screw my wife. Get your ass out here. I'm going to chop you to pieces. The crowd had only been guessing, but his outburst was a direct confession. A collective ooh went through them. It was confirmed. Such envy. It figured. Han Yun was so enchanting. How could she be some chaste, virtuous woman? A pity it was Xiao Ran who got to have her. If only it were me. Every man present involuntarily gulped, even the old men in their 50s and 60s. Men will be men, after all. Lin Yue kept hammering on the door, the cleaver striking sparks against the metal. Just then, Han Yun and Zhang Jingya rushed over. Seeing everyone watching the drama unfold, Han Yun stumbled, nearly fainting. It was over. Her reputation was completely ruined. More importantly, after Lin Yue's outburst, would Xiao Ran ever trade with her again? They would starve. They would die of thirst. What were they going to do? Click. The iron door opened, and a beam of light shone out, accompanied by a waft of warm air. Lin Yue instinctively shielded his eyes. Accustomed to the darkness, the sudden exposure to light caused an intense, stinging pain. Xiao Ran had turned on a flashlight, a powerful one at that, bright enough to severely damage Lin Yue's vision. Lin Yue, already incandescent with rage, grew even more resentful. He tightened his grip on the cleaver's handle and roared, Xiao Ran, you screw my wife. How are you going to compensate me? Han Yun nearly fainted again. You actually said it out loud. I can never show my face in public again. Xiao Ran's voice drifted out. How do you want me to compensate you? In truth, his dealings with Han Yun and Zhang Jingya were purely transactional, entirely consensual. There was no question of compensation. But since Lin Yue had come looking for a fight, he might as well play along. Lin Yue couldn't hide his greed. Give me this villa as compensation, and you can have that bitch. I'm tired of her anyway. Han Yun had been able to bring back so much instant ramen and clean water. What did that imply? Xiao Ran definitely had much more food and water. He was, of course, just bluffing about being tired of her, but now that his wife had been with another man, tainted, could he still treasure her? To hell with her. Let the adulterous pair freeze, starve, and die of thirst. Han Yun's pretty face turned deathly pale, as if she'd been struck by a heavy blow. Shame, anger, and heartbreak washed over her. Disappointment that her love had been so utterly misplaced. She had been wholeheartedly devoted to Lin Yue. Even when his gambling had cost them everything, she had never abandoned him. She had even sold her body to get food for her husband. And this was a reward. Devastated, Han Yun slumped to the ground. Flash! The flashlight beam shot directly into Lin Yue's eyes. Even shielding them with his hand did no good. He was forced to stumble backward until, with a thud, he slammed into the tunnel wall and stopped. The bright light shifted, and Xiao Ran emerged. "You've got some nerve," he said coldly. "Xiao Ran, I'll kill you." Lin Yue roared, swinging his knife wildly toward Xiao Ran. In truth, he couldn't see where Xiao Ran was, only slashing at the light. At that moment, he was completely consumed by rage. Xiao Ran sneered and lashed out with a kick. Lin Yue couldn't see his attacker, but Xiao Ran could see him perfectly. The kick landed squarely on Lin Yue's abdomen, sending him stumbling backward out of the tunnel, where he collapsed onto his backside. Clang! The kitchen knife clattered to the floor. Xiao Ran walked out and casually picked it up. As he approached Lin Yue, he brought the knife to his face. Lin Yue was still dazed. Just as he regained his senses, he saw the kitchen knife right in front of him. He nearly scared the piss out of himself. The courage born of his anger instantly receded like a tide, replaced by a fear that clutched his heart, causing a cold sweat to break out on his back. You wouldn't dare," he stammered. In that moment, he reverted to the pathetic, cowardly gambling addict he'd been in the elevator months ago. Xiao Ran glanced at Han Yun, a wicked smile playing on his lips. "I'm thinking of buying your wife," he said. "Name your price. How many packs of instant noodles and bottles of water?" Lin Yue hesitated. He could abandon his wife. Han Yun had cheated on him, wronged him, but selling her to Xiao Ran? That was different. Would he still be a man? Even in ancient times, only the lowest gambling scum sold their wives. If he named a price, he'd be nailed to the pillar of shame forever. "Hurry up. My patience is limited." Xiao Ran pressed the blade against Lin Yue's neck. The cold steel made Lin Yue shudder violently, and instantly, a warm gush erupted from within him. Fortunately, the weather was cold, and he was wearing so many layers that no one would notice he'd wet himself. 10 packs. 10 packs. Lin Yue blurted out, as if desperate to rid himself of a burden. Xiao Ran scoffed and looked towards Han Yun. She seemed to have lost all strength, sitting there numbly, the light gone from her eyes like a lifeless puppet. Seizing the opportunity, Lin Yue quietly scrambled to his feet. He wanted to go home, lock his door tightly, and never hear Xiao Ran's name again. But Xiao Ran's gaze suddenly sharpened. He slashed out with a knife. Splat! Blood sprayed. The kitchen knife embedded itself in Lin Yue's neck, and a torrent of blood gushed out. Xiao Ran tried to pull the knife free, but found the blade was stuck fast. He couldn't dislodge it. Whatever. It wasn't like he was fond of this kind of weapon, and there were plenty of other blades around. He stepped back a few paces to avoid getting splattered. Someone who tries to stab you. Was he supposed to spare them? Keep them around for the holidays? What times were these? Was he supposed to be afraid of killing? He wasn't afraid of killing in front of everyone. Then dead silence. Murder. He committed murder. Xiao Ran killed him. Then everyone scattered, scared out of their wits. Although they all knew the world had gone mad. To kill someone so openly, it still terrified them all. But just then, Han Yun suddenly stood up and walked towards Lin Yue. His consciousness was already fading, but when he saw his wife approach, a flicker of light returned to his eyes, as if experiencing a final burst of lucidity. Han Yun reached out and gripped the knife in Lin Yue's throat. She pulled with all her might. With a sickening squelch, the knife came free, and she collapsed to the ground. Lin Yue clutched his wound with one hand and pointed at Xiao Ran with the other. His meaning was clear: wife, go kill him. Han Yun raised the knife and brought it down. However, the blow wasn't aimed at Xiao Ran. It landed on Lin Yue's face. Thwack! The knife struck, but couldn't break bone. However, one of Lin Yue's eyes was gouged out. His other eye widened in disbelief. He couldn't believe that his always submissive wife would actually strike him. He stared at Han Yun incredulously. This was even more unbelievable than Xiao Ran's attack. Han Yin pulled the knife free and hacked again and again, thwack, 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 slashing until she was utterly exhausted. Only then did she collapse and burst into sobs. She felt wronged, indignant. She had sacrificed so much for her husband. And him? Not only did he not understand her, but he had also sold her for 10 packs of instant noodles. When a woman driven mad by love turns to darkness, it's a terrifying sight. Even Xiao Ran grimaced. He wouldn't dare sleep beside a woman like that. She might just pull a knife and gut you in the middle of the night. But Han Yin stood up again. She staggered toward Xiao Ran, as if drunk. Her clothes were soaked in blood, a frightening sight. She actually gave Xiao Ran an eerie, coquettish smile. "Let me use your bathroom to wash up. In return, you can have me for free." Such brazen words. She would never have dared to say them before. But now, she couldn't care less. It seemed that after being so cruelly betrayed by her husband, the shock had been too much for her. Xiao Ran smiled faintly. "Go ahead." He led Han Yin back to the villa. Zhang Jingyao thought for a moment, then quickly followed them. Being alone with a corpse was just too terrifying. Han Yin went to take a shower. Xiao Ran sat nearby, leisurely sipping tea, while Zhang Jingyao shivered, trembling to one side. Xiao Ran and Han Yin were both ruthless people. Only she was weak and helpless. A full half-hour passed before Han Yin emerged. How much water did she use? Xiao Ran didn't count. Anyway, if others found out, they'd probably lynch her for it, but Xiao Ran couldn't care less. He had no idea how many tons of tap water he had collected. She could shower like this every day for 100 lifetimes, and they still wouldn't run out. That's just how ridiculously well off he was. Xiao Ran gave Han Yin and Zhang Jingya a few parting tips before they left. Basic stuff like keeping the doors locked tight and not opening them for anyone. And most importantly, to always check carefully before going outside to make sure no one was lurking around. Of course, the odds of someone staking out the place were low. It was just too damn cold out. Sioux City had never experienced such bitter cold before. Temperatures had plunged well below 0 Fahrenheit, and people's winter clothes just weren't up to the task. A short stroll outside was doable, but staying out there for long? Nobody could handle that. And this was just in the minus teens. If it ever dropped to minus 40 or 50, the frigid air would actually start damaging your lungs. In that kind of cold, 20 minutes was enough to mess up your insides. Dying wouldn't even be surprising. So, as long as they took some precautions before heading out, they should be fine. Xiao Ran's long-winded advice wasn't entirely selfless. Han Yin was hot, pretty face, killer body. He wasn't ready to part with a hookup that attractive. If she got raped or something, he'd definitely lose interest. No way he'd touch her again after that. He paused, mulling things over. After killing Lin Yue in front of everyone, he'd probably become some kind of monster in the neighborhood's eyes. The downside? Everyone would avoid him like the plague, terrified he might decide to butcher them next. The upside? No one would dare mess with him. Seemed like a fair trade either way. Xiao Ran smirked. After what happened today, people were bound to guess he had stockpiled supplies. That would attract attention. He knew it, but he wasn't worried about the obvious threats. If push came to shove, he could always reveal his dimensional space secret and kill them all. Simple. Still, he'd rather play with his adorable neighbors for a few more days if possible. Being trapped in the complex with no one else alive would be way too boring. Sure, sex was great, but it wasn't a 24/7 kind of thing. That'd get old fast. To Xiao Ran, everyone in the neighborhood was a toy. The man had died once already. What kind of conscience or morality could you expect from someone like that? The fact he wasn't actively committing evil was already his version of kindness. News of Lin You's death spread like wildfire through the complex, sparking an uproar. Soon, a few residents gathered for a meeting. Naturally, the topic was Xiao Ran. The ringleader was a man named Mo Peng. He used to run with a gang in his younger days and ranked fourth in the hierarchy, earning him the nickname Old Four. He was pretty well known around the neighborhood, so with him leading the charge, the anti-Xiao Ran meeting got underway. It was held at Mo Peng's apartment. What surprised everyone was the presence of a young woman in her 20s. Quite the looker for someone in their 40s like Mo Peng. Someone in the group recognized her and blurted out, "Wait, isn't that Li Juanhao's wife, Wang Meiqi?" At the sound of her name, Wang Meiqi flinched. She opened her mouth to say something. Smack. Mo Peng slapped her hard across the face. "Get back in her room." Then, turning back to the group, he explained with a sneer, "This woman dished her husband for a bite of food. Came begging me to take her in. I pitted her and gave her something to eat, and let her warm my bed." The others exchanged knowing smirks. But behind those smiles was a shared, silent thought. Ruthless bastard. Come on, What food could a scumbag like Mo Peng possibly have lying around? Most likely, he killed Li Junhao, took his stash, and claimed the wife for himself. That story sounded a lot more believable. Want proof? Just knock on the neighbor's door and see if Li Junhao answers. Bet you anything he won't. Bash the door in, and you might even find his frozen corpse. With how cold it was, bodies didn't rot. Or stink, so no one would have noticed. Otherwise, they'd have smelled it through the walls by now. But was any of this their problem? Of course not. The meeting wasn't about justice. It was about survival and greed. They weren't there because they cared. They were there because they figured Xiao Ran must be sitting on a mountain of supplies. A man cold-blooded enough to kill Lin Yue without blinking was scary. But with enough people, they had a shot at taking him down and claiming everything for themselves. One guy even joked, grinning, "How's the little wife taste?" "Tight." Mo Peng laughed heartily. Seeing the man's interest, he added, "Want to borrow her for a round? Just 2 packs of instant noodles. Or the equivalent in other food. Got meat? 2 ounces and she's yours for the night." The man considered it, then shook his head. Too expensive. Wang Meichi wasn't exactly a bombshell. Nice figure, but not worth that price. Now, if it were Han Yun, maybe. "Gentlemen," Mo Peng rallied them. "Once we pull this off, we'll all be rich. After that, you can pick any woman in the complex you want. Flash a little food or clean water, and they'll drop their pants for you, no questions asked." "Let's do it," the other 5 echoed in unison. Mo Peng hadn't invited too many people. More people meant smaller shares. 6 was enough. No way Xiao Ran could handle 6 grown men at once. Oldly, he turned to the oldest of the group, a man pushing 70 with a full head of white hair and matching beard. "You used to be a locksmith, right? Still got the tools? Still got the skills?" Oldly grinned, revealing a mouthful of yellowed teeth, half of them missing. "No problem." "Good." Mo Peng looked around at the others. "Oldly will get the door open. The rest of us? Take Xiao Ran down, no holding back. Kill him if we have to." "Got it," they all nodded. "All right then. We move at midnight." None of the 5 left Mo Peng's place afterward. No one trusted anyone enough for that. What if someone bailed and ratted them out to Xiao Ran for a payoff? No, they'd wait. Just a few hours left.